Chapter 455. Dean carried his backpack and waited for a moment after Francis and the blond youth left. He saw a large number of people gathered in front of an open street. Bursts of laughter could be heard from time to time. His heart moved as he walked over with the mentality of observing and joining in the fun. "Boy, watch where you're going." A voice echoed from behind. Dean didn't look back to see that the voice belonged to a blond youth. His face was full of arrogance. He was holding a beautiful blonde woman in his hand. There were several attendants in black suits and white gloves behind them. It was obvious that he was from an aristocratic family. Dean frowned as he stepped aside to make way. He didn't want to provoke any trouble as he had just entered the inner wall. After he stepped aside, the golden-haired young man walked over with the golden-haired beauty in his arms. He didn't even look at him. Dean came to the back of the crowd from the other side. He tiptoed slightly to look at the stage. There were a few people in strange costumes performing on it. The performance was impressively magic. Dean was startled, but soon remembered that magic was a favorite show of aristocrats. No wonder it attracted so many people to watch. If there is a magician in this world who disguises as a magician, then they can easily become a master magician and win numerous awards. Dean smiled. "Hey!" A voice echoed from the crowd. It was the blond youth who had asked Duddian to make way. He didn't know when he appeared in front of the crowd. He looked at the magician who was performing on the stage. "It's boring to transform into a bird or a flower. Let's see how you cut a living person." The middle-aged magician who was performing on the stage was startled. He quickly jumped off the stage and bowed. "Young master, we're just a small magic troupe. We didn't prepare a big sawing performance today, so we didn't bring enough props." The blond youth didn't expect that his wish would be rejected. He raised his foot and kicked the middle-aged magician's chest. At the same time, he took out a stack of gold notes and threw them out. The gold notes scattered in the air like snowflakes covering the middle-aged magician's body. The blond youth said coldly, "I will only say it once. I want to see it. Immediately act for me, understand?" The few people who were preparing the props on the stage jumped down in fright. They supported the middle-aged magician and kept apologizing to the golden-haired youth. Dean frowned as he looked at the scene. He didn't expect the blond youth to be so overbearing. Such a thing rarely happened in the outer wall. Most of the nobles in the outer wall loved their face, so they wouldn't do such a shameful thing. However, he knew that he wasn't a hero, so he naturally wouldn't stand up for this kind of thing. He could only silently observe this scene. "I've already paid up. Hurry up and perform." Perform. We want to see the big saws on a living person. Hurry up." The surrounding crowd cheered, urging the middle-aged magician and the others. When the middle-aged magician and the others saw the excited crowd, their faces darkened. As a magician, how could they perform a sawing on a living person without props? This was completely unreasonable. However, when they saw the golden-haired young man's luxurious clothes and the attendants behind him, they knew that if they didn't perform today, it would be difficult for them to let this matter rest. "All right, we will perform." The middle-aged magician climbed up from the ground and came in front of the golden-haired youth. "We will prepare immediately. Please be patient and wait for a moment. I'll send someone to bring the props." The golden-haired youth looked impatient. "Are you deaf or are you out of your mind? I want to see it now. Do you want me to wait? Do you want to die or become a dog slave?" It seems quite interesting to have a dog slave who can perform magic. "Aina, do you want it?" As he said that, he tilted his head and looked at the blonde woman in his arms dotingly, his eyes filled with gentleness. "Elder, you can't do this." The middle-aged magician's face changed as he said. The blonde woman looked at him and shook her head. "I don't want such an old one. My sisters will laugh at me." The youth nodded. "That's true. I'll find a young one for you next time." "All right." The golden-haired youth turned to the middle-aged magician. "Why are you still standing here?" The middle-aged magician breathed a sigh of relief and forced a smile. He turned around and called several assistants to return to the stage. He frowned and looked worried. Such a dangerous magic trick was easy to make mistakes even with props, let alone without props. "Leader, what should we do? We don't even have a saw here. How are we going to cut a living person?" "Yes, what should we do?" The assistants looked at the middle-aged magician anxiously but they had no idea what to do. The middle-aged magician's face was gloomy. After climbing to the stage, his eyes flashed. "I have an idea," he whispered. "Do you remember?" The assistants were stunned when they heard this, but they all heaved a sigh of relief. "Leader is smart. This is a good idea. Let's do it. I'll prepare it immediately." "Leader, isn't this too?" The middle-aged magician interrupted the last person's words. "You don't want to work anymore? Do you want to do it yourself?" The youth who spoke shrunk his neck and didn't say anything. "Everyone, we're going to cut a living person." The middle-aged magician stood on the platform and spoke to the crowd in a clear voice. At the same time, a few assistants moved the props onto the platform. It was a huge wooden box. "Next, we'll select a person from the crowd to participate in the performance. It will show that we didn't do anything." The middle-aged magician smiled and looked at the crowd that was stirred up by his words. He immediately said, "Everyone, please rest assured that this performance is not dangerous. Next, I will choose a person at random. This is a random selection. It will not be a fake." The middle-aged magician picked up a commonly used prop. He looked at the crowd and threw it towards the back. Dean noticed that the other person's eyes were locked on him. He immediately moved to the side and pulled the person next to him. Whoosh! The random selection prop was a lead-bottom cloth ball. It seemed to float lightly, but it fell just in time to the position where Dean was standing. It was caught by the person who was dragged by Dean. He must have practiced for a long time to throw it. The person holding the softball looked at the ball in his hand. He threw it to the ground and shouted at the middle-aged magician, "Do you want to die? How did you throw it?" The middle-aged magician saw the blonde hair and couldn't help but feel embarrassed and annoyed. He quickly found Dean and pointed at him. "Little brother, can you come up and cooperate with me?" Dean just wanted to avoid this matter, but unexpectedly this person directly pointed at his head. He couldn't help but be startled, and his face suddenly became gloomy. "Didn't we agree to randomly select? What are you pointing at?" The middle-aged magician was infuriated and said with a sullen face, "You're the one who was chosen. Do you want to make everyone unhappy? I just asked you to come up and cooperate. It's your fortune to be able to perform for this young master. How dare you refuse?" Dean was so angry that he wanted to laugh. He understood that the middle-aged magician didn't prepare any props. He knew that the process would be dangerous, so he didn't choose the members of his group. Instead, he chose from the crowd. Dean had black hair. The phenomenon of using hair color to determine identity existed in the outer wall. It was even more serious here. Therefore, he was treated as a soft persimmon by the middle-aged magician. "Boy, go. You are the one who pulled me. If you don't go, then you will be in for a good time." The blond middle-aged man who threw the ball said in a harsh tone, "Yes, go. Whose family slave is this? They don't even care about it. How impolite of you to make so many people wait. How insensible." The crowd around emerged. Dean's face was gloomy as he looked at the middle-aged magician. "We need props to perform magic. You didn't prepare any props. What if there is a life danger?" The middle-aged magician didn't expect to be questioned by Dean. "We are professionals, so there won't be any danger. I said that we don't have props, but it's just a joke to increase the atmosphere. Moreover, with our skills, we can perform even without props. You don't have to worry about it." Dean found it funny. He had a little sympathy for this person, but now he had the heart to kill him. "Your technology? If you really have the skills, then show us how to make a person out of thin air. Why do you need my help? I told you to go, so go. Why are you being so long-winded?" Someone beside him said impatiently, "Long-winded. Why do you have so much nonsense to say?" "That's right. Whose house is this?" Middle-aged magician looked at Dean. "Don't let everyone wait. Hurry up." Dean looked at the people who were talking next to him. All of them had blonde hair. Only one of them had brown hair, but he was wearing an expensive pocket watch on his chest. Obviously, he had a background. He said in a cold voice, "If you like to go, why don't you go yourself?" "Hey, how can you talk like that? How rude. If you speak like that again, do you believe that I will discipline you on behalf of your master?" The people around Dean were angry. Dean narrowed his eyes as killing intent flashed in his eyes. He had the urge to start a massacre. But after all, he wasn't in the outer wall. He took a deep breath and suppressed his anger. "I'm not going to the outer wall." He didn't need to think to know that the magic was absolutely dangerous. The middle-aged magician dared to pick him because he knew that there would be danger. Dean couldn't find him because of his identity. This was the reason why the middle-aged magician didn't dare to pick the nobles around him. Seeing that Dean was about to leave, the onlookers immediately pointed at him. Chapter 456. Is it the Dragon Clan? It's the carriage of the Dragon Clan. Quick, get out of the way. The pedestrians on both sides of the street exclaimed as they saw the black dragon flag on the carriage. It was as if they had encountered a scourge. Dragon Clan? Dean was startled. The image of the Dragon Clan's girl flashed in his mind. He quickly moved to the side of the road to avoid the carriage. The people gathered at the roadside where the middle-aged magician was performing didn't react so quickly. Although they saw the carriage galloping over, it was too chaotic when they dispersed, causing several people to fall to the ground and grimace in pain. Ride. The knight in front of the carriage tightened the rope. The horse neighed as it stopped in front of the crowd. Bastards! Get out of the way! The knight snapped the whip as he shouted at the people who had fallen to the ground. The people on the ground were scared as they climbed up in panic. They didn't care about the pain as they apologized and moved to the side of the road. The knight was ready to continue his journey. Suddenly, the door of the carriage was pushed open. A green figure jumped out and landed next to the knight. It was a girl who was about 15 or 16 years old. She was wearing a green cheongsam. She was lively and smart. Her eyes were full of cunning and mischievous color. She looked at the middle-aged magician and said to the knight, "Is that a magic show? I want to see it." The knight asked, "Miss, why did you come down?" "I want to see magic." The girl didn't answer the knight as she walked towards the middle-aged magician. The knight was anxious as he quickly got off the horse. "Miss, we have to hurry. I already said I want to see magic." "If you want to hurry, you can hurry yourself," the girl said in annoyance. The knight smiled as he knew that he couldn't change the girl's mind. He looked at the middle-aged magician. "Hey, didn't you hear the words of our families, miss? Hurry up and perform the magic. Be careful of your head if you don't perform well." The middle-aged magician's face turned pale. "Greetings, Miss Dragon. What kind of magic do you want to see?" The young girl rubbed her chin and thought for a moment. Then she said excitedly, "Let's see a live person. I heard that among your magic tricks, this is the most exciting. Hurry up, show me a live person." You have to be careful. Don't let me see through your magic tricks. If your acting is too clumsy, I'll punish you." She raised her hand and slid it across her neck. Her sparkling eyes were filled with intimidation, but together with her young and beautiful face, she gave off a kind of cute and mischievous feeling. Sawing a living person again, middle-aged magician almost choked out blood. He regretted that he didn't bring all the props today. He looked around and saw that the crowd had dispersed. Only a few blonde nobles were left. He hesitated as he saw Dean from the corner of his eyes. He immediately bowed to the girl. "Miss, we don't have enough manpower. Can we ask this person to cooperate with us?" He raised his hand and pointed at Dean. Dean didn't expect trouble to find him even though he was so far away. His eyes flashed with killing intent. He wanted to leave as he was too lazy to take revenge. After all, he was going to leave tonight. He didn't have time to waste on these people. However, the other party had repeatedly brought trouble to him. He couldn't restrain his killing intent any longer. "Whatever. I'm waiting," the girl impatiently said. The middle-aged magician was relieved as he called his assistants. Several assistants came in front of Dean. One of them said in a cold tone, "Come over. Please cooperate with us." Dean narrowed his eyes as he saw the cold expression on the middle-aged magician's face. But he knew that the reason why the middle-aged magician dared to do this was because he knew that he would offend Miss Dragon if he resisted. Dean took a deep breath as he restrained his killing intent. A mere street magician wasn't worth offending a big force like the Dragon Clan. He said in a cold voice, "Get out of the way." The assistant's face changed. The one who spoke before angrily said, "You don't know what's good for you." Dean pushed the assistant's shoulder and strode towards the middle-aged magician. "Can we start?" The middle-aged magician's eyes were gloomy as he coldly snorted. Suddenly, a smile appeared on his face as he said, "Thank you for your cooperation. Please come inside." He opened the wooden box next to him. The assistants quickly returned to the stage to assist the middle-aged magician in his performance. Next, miss, please enjoy the big saw. The middle-aged magician bowed to the young lady. Stop nagging. Hurry up. The young girl wrinkled her nose. The middle-aged magician's face showed a trace of awkwardness, but he quickly covered it with a smile. He turned around and winked at his assistant. He picked up the sharp sword beside him and said, There is no bandsaw today, so I will stab someone alive. Everyone, this sword is definitely a real sword. Please take a look. As he said that, he slashed at the prop beside him. Instantly, the prop was cut in half. Dean's eyes flashed as he listened to the middle-aged magician fiddling and exaggerating the atmosphere inside the wooden box. He was thinking about ways to kill people. The middle-aged magician's opening was over and the official performance began. Dean looked at the actions of the middle-aged magician through thermal vision. Although he couldn't see the sword in the middle-aged magician's hand, but he could see every move of the middle-aged magician. He could easily judge the direction of the middle-aged magician's attack. Whoosh! The sharp sword pierced into the wooden box. Dean had anticipated it and easily dodged it. The middle-aged magician was relieved as he didn't feel that he had stabbed an object. It would be best if the magic was successful. Whoosh! The second sword pierced again. Dean dodged again. Then the third sword, the fourth sword. In the blink of an eye, 10 swords were inserted into the wooden box from all angles. The audience exclaimed in surprise. The people who had previously hidden to the side because they were afraid of this young lady of the Dragon Clan stood on the side of the road and watched from afar. Seeing this, they enthusiastically applauded and cheered. Huh? The young girl exclaimed in surprise, a look of surprise on her pretty face. The middle-aged magician was relieved when he saw the surprise on her face. At the same time, he felt proud as he said, Miss, we will open the box now. He waved his hand to call his assistants. The assistants immediately stepped forward and pulled out their swords. As the swords were pulled out one by one, the assistants were all incomparably shocked. None of the swords were stained with blood. They knew that there was no mechanism in the wooden box. Soon, all the swords were pulled out, and the box was opened, revealing Dean inside. His whole body was unscathed, but his clothes were cut in a few places. As he took a step forward, the backpack on his back suddenly fell off, but it was cut, and the clothes and belongings inside suddenly fell down. Dean frowned. He bent down and picked them up. Huh! Suddenly, the girl in the audience exclaimed. The next moment, everyone felt a breeze pass by. The girl's figure was like a phantom as she jumped from the ground to the high platform. She said to Dean, You, show me the thing in your hand. Dean was surprised as he saw the girl talking to him. He handed over the purple handkerchief. When the girl saw the purple handkerchief, the suspicion on her face suddenly turned into surprise. She looked up at Dean and was about to speak, but suddenly thought of something. The surprise on her face quickly disappeared, and she restored her previous smiling appearance, saying, Nothing. I find you very pleasing to the eye. Come with me. Chapter 457. Dean still clearly remembered the little girl who took him to the Mysian orphanage in the heavy rain. She looked about the same age as him, 8 or 9 years old. She was also wearing a well-tailored and exquisite cheongsam. If he calculated her age, she should have grown into the same appearance as the girl in front of him. Moreover, he had never seen a noble wearing a unique style of cheongsam. It was incompatible with the Western-style clothes inside the giant wall. He had only seen the classic Oriental beauty on the girl in front of him and the girl in front of him. Both of them were from the Dragon Clan. It was obvious that the little girl who took him to the Mysian orphanage was from the Dragon Clan. Thinking of this, his heart thumped, and his eyes lit up. Do you know this? Dean asked. He was full of expectation and even a trace of nervousness. The girl winked at Dean. Let's get in the car first. I'll talk to you later. Dean understood that this wasn't the right place to talk. He nodded and suddenly thought of something. Although it's presumptuous, can you do me a favor? What favor? The girl's eyes turned as she asked with interest. Dean said, I want this person's life. He raised his hand and pointed at the middle-aged magician. The middle-aged magician was scared when he heard Dean's words. Cold sweat oozed out of his body as his face turned pale. The young girl pouted and said, "And here I was wondering what it was. It's just a small matter. With your skills, you should be able to kill him. If you want to kill him, then kill him. I'll cover for you." As she said that, she patted her slightly bulging chest. Dean was relieved. He saw that the girl wasn't malicious towards him. In fact, she was very interested in him. That's why he took the risk to ask. After all, he didn't know when he would be able to find the middle-aged magician if he left with her. It would take a lot of energy and time. "Miss, I didn't offend you. You can't." The middle-aged magician's legs trembled as he saw the girl agree. The knight beside him leaped forward and reached out to stop him. He said coldly, "Bastard, stay away from our Mississippi, yes, yes." The middle-aged magician trembled in fear and begged, "Miss, my magic performance was very successful. I have no enmity with him, but he wants to take my life. Miss, you can't agree. By the way, I am Baron Jesse's man. Please, for the sake of our Baron, please spare me." The girl frowned. "Can you be quiet, Baron Jesse? Who does he think he is?" The middle-aged magician's face turned pale. He was about to continue to plead. Dean looked at the girl. "Do we do it here?" "Of course. What are you afraid of? It's not a big deal to kill a pariah," the girl said in an indifferent tone. Dean was relieved. The lives of the people in the inner wall were as cheap as grass. He was no longer polite. He hooked the sword on the ground and grabbed the hilt. The moment the middle-aged magician opened his mouth, the sword pierced through the back of his head. The latter's pleading expression came to an abrupt end. There was a bit of panic and astonishment in his eyes. He bit the sword as his life quietly passed away. Dean pulled out the sword. His palm loosened at the same time, and the blood-stained sword hit the assistant next to him. Puff! The assistant's heart was pierced through the assistant's heart. The assistant was the one who had scolded Duddian earlier. He was shocked when he saw the experience of the middle-aged magician. He didn't expect Duddian to attack him. His eyes widened as the sword pierced through his chest. His body flopped down on the platform. Both of them died in an instant. Dean glanced at the girl. "I'm sorry. I accidentally killed one more." "It's okay. Can we go now?" The girl didn't care. She was only concerned about her own affairs. Dean nodded. "Let's go." The girl smiled and jumped off the platform. She hummed a song as she walked back to her carriage. The knight looked at Duddian, looked up and down for a moment, then turned around and followed behind the girl. Dean put away the things in his backpack and followed the knight. After Dean entered the carriage, the knight jumped on the horse and led the team to move forward. The people who were scattered on both sides of the street went to the center of the road after the carriage left. They looked at the direction of the carriage and talked. "Gee, I didn't expect to see the Miss of the Dragon Clan here. I think I have seen her before. Is she the second princess of the Dragon Clan? She's truly devastatingly beautiful. She's too beautiful. Be careful. She will cut off your tongue if she hears you. The second princess of a Dragon Clan is a famous little devil. I don't know the origin of that kid. He can get the favor of the Dragon Clan. I envy him." Everyone was envious and sighed, and no one took another glance at the two corpses on the high platform. "Where did you get the handkerchief?" The smile on the girl's face disappeared as she stared at Dean. Her voice was as cold as ice. There wasn't the slightest trace of innocence from before. Dean was startled. He stared at her eyes and slowly said, "A person gave it to me." "Gave it to you?" The girl narrowed her eyes. "This belongs to the Dragon Clan. We never give it to outsiders. Do you know that if you lie to me, you will die miserably? It'll be much more miserable than those two people." Dean frowned. "Someone gave it to me. You can check if you don't believe me. Your Dragon Clan's intelligence network should be able to find out who gave it to me, right?" The girl stared at him. It didn't seem like he was lying. "What did the person who gave it to you look like? What was her name? Where did she give it to you?" Dean shook his head. "It's been many years. She gave it to me 7 or 8 years ago. At that time, she was still a little girl. I've only seen her once. I haven't seen her since. I don't know her name. 7 or 8 years ago." The girl was startled. Dean's heart skipped a beat as he looked at her. "Do you remember 7 or 8 years ago in the slums of the outer wall, do you remember seeing a little boy? The girl's thoughts were pulled back by his words. She was startled once again. Outer wall? Are you from the outer wall? You can't be that little boy, right? There was a burst of excitement in Dean's heart. Yes, I was a little boy at that time. Do you remember me? The girl was startled as her thoughts drifted away. 7 or 8 years ago. Outer wall. No wonder, no wonder. Her eyes became clear as she looked at Dean. Yes, I remember. I didn't expect to see you again after so many years. It's really great. Dean didn't expect her to be so happy. Both of them were 7 or 8 years old at that time. If it wasn't for his excellent memory from childhood, he would have forgotten about it. She was the first person he came into contact with after he came out of the freezer. However, the other party unexpectedly remembered and was even happy about it. Dean took a deep breath. Thank you for sending me to the orphanage. Otherwise, I'm afraid I would have died a long time ago. You saved my life. He wasn't being polite. Orphans like him who weren't taken in by the orphanage would be caught by the ordinary poor as free labor. Chapter 458. Moreover, judging from the chaotic order of the slums, if he was really captured by other poor people, it would be difficult for him to survive. Even if he was quick-witted, but because of the language barrier coupled with his weak body, he would soon be exhausted to death. If he encountered some cruel mobs, he would even become their food. Therefore, he had always regarded the girl who had sent him to the orphanage as his savior. She was also the only person he was truly grateful to besides Jura after he woke up. The girl was startled when she heard Dean's words. She stared at him and smiled. I didn't expect you to remember it so clearly after so many years. Dean smiled. There are always things that shouldn't be forgotten. The girl smiled. I'll formally introduce myself to you. My name is Aisha. As you can see, I'm a member of the Dragon Clan. If you have any difficulties in the future, you can come to me for help at any time. Dean felt a sense of intimacy as he saw her smile. My name is Dean. If you need any help, you can tell me. I'll help you as long as I can. Aisha blinked. Don't you live in the outer wall? How did you come here? As far as I know, it should be very difficult for people from the outer wall to come here. Dean nodded. I was brought here for some reason. I will leave tonight. Some reason? Aisha was startled. Will you come back in the future? Dean shook his head. I don't think so. There was a trace of loss in Aisha's eyes. Then, will you never come back? Dean felt strange as he heard the reluctance in her voice. But at the same time, he felt a burst of warmth. It's hard to say what will happen in the future. But as long as there is a chance, I will come back. Aisha thought for a moment. How about you join our dragon clan? Then you can live in the inner wall. What do you think? Dadian shook his head. I've joined the monastery. I'm afraid. Monastery? Aisha was surprised. So you were recruited by the monastery. I heard that the monastery had established the holy church in the outer wall. Is there a secret mission for you? Dadian nodded. Aisha was surprised. I heard that the monastery had established the holy church in the outer wall. Dean didn't expect her to be so smart. He nodded. You are right. Aisha's face was full of interest. What is the task? Is it fun? Dean frowned as he saw her crystal-clear eyes. He immediately shook his head. It's a confidential task. I can't tell you. I hope you can forgive me. Although he was grateful, but it was the first time they met. He couldn't tell her everything. It wasn't that he didn't trust her, but it was a trace of vigilance that he had developed over a long period of time. Aisha pouted, stingy. Dean smiled. There was a trace of hesitation in his heart, but he held back after thinking about it. Haisha saw that Dadian didn't want to talk about it. I can give you a high position if you join the Dragon Clan. You can live in the inner wall. Are you willing to do that? As for the monastery, I can help you. Dadian was moved as he heard this. He wanted to live in the inner wall and get in touch with the core secrets of the giant wall. However, he would have to rely on the protection of the little girl in the future. Moreover, he knew nothing about the Dragon Clan. The only thing he knew was that the girl in the Tang suit had a super strong combat power. He judged that the Dragon Clan belonged to a very strong family of witches. Is the Dragon Clan very strong in the inner wall? Dean asked. Aisha saw the interest in Dean's eyes. Of course. Our dragon family is one of the three major families. We are the strongest amongst the three major families. It's easy for me to ask for a person from the monastery. Three major families? Dean was surprised. Didn't it mean that there were at least two people who were comparable to the girl in the Tang suit? Moreover, he wasn't sure about the status of the girl in the Tang suit in the Dragon Clan. Was it the highest or the middle? If you join our Dragon Clan, we will give you the most abundant resources. Moreover, with me, you will definitely get the most intensive training. Soon, you will become an existence comparable to the mystic sect's holy master. Haisha said, at that time, no one will dare to bully you wherever you go. Dean was a little moved. Looking at her delicate and lovely face, he could vaguely see the outline of a little girl from his childhood. In a trance, the memory of that dark, rainy night emerged. He was supported by the little girl step by step towards the orphanage. His heart was slightly warm, and he deeply said, "Thank you." Aisha's eyes lit up. "Do you agree?" Dean stared at her and shook his head. "I can't promise you for the time being." "Why?" Aisha was surprised. Dean looked away. "I don't want to live in the inner wall for the time being." "You don't want to live in the inner wall?" Aisha was stunned, as it was the first time she heard such words. She said, "I won't force you since you don't want to come to the inner wall for the time being. But if you need me in the inner wall, then don't hesitate to come to me. This is the order from the Dragon Clan." She handed a medal to Dean. It was a black medal. It was engraved with a dragon pattern. Dean looked at it and reached out to take it. He remembered that the girl in the Tang suit had said the same words. He sighed and said to her, "Thank you. If there is a chance, I will definitely look for you." Aisha sighed. "It's a pity that I don't have enough authority to go to the outer wall. I can't summon you from the outer wall." Dean was surprised. "You can't go to the outer wall?" Then, Haisha shook her head. "We sneaked out. Our family can't go to the outer wall and interfere with the outer wall. I don't have the ability to call you in unless you are willing to become a member of our Dragon Clan. Otherwise, I can't call you again and again." Dean was startled. "How did you sneak out?" Dean asked. There was some curiosity and expectation in his heart. Perhaps this was a more convenient way to sneak out. Aisha shrugged her shoulders and said, "He climbed over the wall when the guards on the high wall weren't paying attention." Dean was stunned. "Climbed over the wall? You were 8 or 9 years old at that time. The height of the wall." Chapter 459. Aisha pouted. "As long as we are not discovered by the guards, it is not difficult to climb over the wall." Dudian was speechless. He was shocked. The girl in front of him was too terrible. What kind of physique was she to be able to climb over the high wall of the inner wall when she was 7 or 8 years old? Moreover, the witch family's nurturing methods were also incredible. Such a young girl was able to possess such powerful strength. Even if she had absorbed God's blessings since she was in her mother's womb, she might not have been able to become so powerful. Unfortunately, this method isn't suitable for you." Aisha sighed with regret. Suddenly, her eyes turned as she said in a pleasantly surprised tone, "I have an idea." "Huh?" Dudian was puzzled. Haisha happily said, "If you want to see me in the future, then we can go outside the giant wall to meet. You were summoned by the monastery, so you should have a good relationship in the outer wall area. Moreover, I can see that your physique is extraordinary, so you should be a hunter in the outer wall area. You can go outside the giant wall, and I can also go from the inner wall area to the outside of the giant wall area. We can meet outside the giant wall at the same time." Dudian looked at her happy expression. He was slightly startled. His heart couldn't help but feel touched. But he quickly responded, "That's not good. It is dangerous outside the giant wall, if that's true." Aisha's eyes lit up. "I can go to find you. You just need to stay in a safe place so that there won't be any danger." Dudian was touched by her words, but he didn't say anything. His throat slightly moved as he softly said, "I'm not worried about myself. I'm worried about you. It is too dangerous for you to cross the mountains outside the giant wall to see me. If you want to see me, then you have to choose a place, and I will come and find you." Aisha immediately shook her head. "I didn't think about it before." But now that I have thought about it, it is absolutely impossible. There's a long way to go from the inner wall to the outer wall. Moreover, the monsters outside the inner wall are far more dangerous than the outer wall. It is too dangerous for you to come over. Dudian hesitated for a moment. I have a special life-saving technique. Don't worry. There won't be an accident. Aisha snorted and said, Don't look down on me. I am very strong. There is no danger for me to walk in this monster area. This matter is settled. You are not allowed to argue anymore. Dean smiled as he looked at her delicate but strong appearance. In fact, he had already noticed that the girl's body was as hot as fire. He had only seen such a strong heat when he sneaked into the inner wall last night. Even Francis's body wasn't as hot as Aisha's. Even the woman who was hugged by the elder was inferior to Aisha's body. Moreover, from her tone, he knew that she had climbed over the inner wall. At that time, her strength was already so tyrannical. Now she must have reached the pinnacle of strength. It was estimated that she was not inferior to the girl in the Tang suit. It was a pity that he didn't have thermal vision when he met the girl in the Tang suit. He couldn't observe the heat of the latter's body, otherwise he could use it as a reference. Well, let's meet at the western corner of the giant wall, Dudian said. Aisha smiled. Well, when are you free? I'll come and find you. Dudian estimated 7 days later. 7 days? Aisha nodded. All right, I'm free too. Let's meet at the western corner of the giant wall in 7 days. Come on, let's pinky swear. She stretched out her pinky finger. Dudian smiled and immediately stretched out his hand to make a pinky promise with her. You said you were going back tonight? It is still early, so I'll take you around. Is it your first time coming to the inner wall? I'll take you to play. Aisha laughed. Dudian thought of Francis. He hesitated for a moment but nodded. All right, I'll trouble you. It's no trouble. I came out to play. There's an old saying in the Dragon Clan. It's better to have fun together than to have fun alone. Aisha smiled. Dudian was surprised as he didn't expect to hear such an old saying. He couldn't help but glance at her Chong Sam. He thought of some ideas. However, it was the first time they met, so it was not convenient to ask about such a secret matter. Haisha saw that Dudian was looking at her, so she blinked and said, What do you think? Do my clothes look good? Dudian's heart jumped as he retracted his eyes. It looks good. Aisha giggled, but didn't say anything. The carriage continued to move forward. Dusk. A wagon with a black dragon flag flew out of Eden and headed towards the relay station outside the city. Haisha looked at Dudian in the carriage. There are a few places I wanted to take you to play, but it's getting late. If you have the opportunity to enter the inner wall, then I'll take you to play. Dudian smiled. There will be opportunities in the future. The carriage stopped at the station. Dean glanced at it, but didn't see Francis's carriage. Francis had probably gone back in advance. He had expected it, so he didn't care. He turned to Haisha and said, Thank you for your hospitality today. See you next time. 7 days later, Aisha said with a smile. Dudian smiled and nodded. Aisha put down the curtain, and the carriage moved away. Dean looked at the carriage until it disappeared from his line of sight. He went into the station and asked the boss for a horse. He had a bag of gold coins with him, but he didn't bring any gold notes. After all, gold notes were issued from the banks in the outer wall. There may not be a place to exchange them in the inner wall. So, real gold was the most useful thing to use. Dudian spent a gold coin to buy a horse. He cited the high prices in the inner wall. It was more than 10 times that of the outer wall. He rode the horse away from the city of Eden. He couldn't help but recall the process of playing with the girl he hadn't seen for a long time. There was a faint smile on his face. Unknowingly, he rode his horse back to the front gate of the monastery on Mount St. Paulo. As soon as he got off the horse, several young men and women dressed as saints appeared with weapons in their hands and surrounded him with stern expressions. Dudian frowned and was about to open his mouth when a voice came from the front. Wait. Dudian looked over and saw Francis riding a horse. He quickly got off the horse and came to the front of the saints. You didn't run away. Run away? Dudian understood. Where can I run to? Francis looked at Dean's appearance. It didn't seem like Dean was pretending. He waved his hand, and the other saints retreated to the side. They stood in a faint posture of encirclement. Francis said in a bad mood. "I told you to wait for me there, but you disappeared as soon as I came back. I thought you took the opportunity to slip away. The courtyard has issued a wanted order for you, but it hasn't been sent out yet. Fortunately, you came back by yourself, or else." Dadian was speechless and angry. "You should know that I can't run away because of my identity. I will die if I run away. That's what happens when you don't listen to me." Francis shrugged. "I'm only in charge of reporting. It's up to the higher-ups to deal with it. You can only blame yourself for running around." Dujian's face sank as he knew that it was useless to argue. "Can we go back now?" "Of course." Francis whispered a few words into the saint's ear. He patted the saint's shoulder. "Let's go." Chapter 460. The night was coming. A team of snow lions galloped out of the giant stone wall and went straight along the official road in the wilderness. The handover of the outer wall has been handled properly. You just need to go there and accept the order," Francis said to Dean as he pulled the fur of the snow lion. "If you don't want to expose your current identity, then wear the mask when we reach the giant wall." Dean silently looked in front of him. He knew that he wouldn't have the chance to enter the inner wall until his identity was exposed or he lost his value. He would be discarded by the inner wall as a chess piece. There was silence along the way. A few hours later, they crossed half of the wilderness of the inner wall and came to the front of the high wall. They met several monsters along the way. Francis beheaded all of them and left their corpses on the side of the road. Dean put on the mask that Francis gave him and rode the snow lion to the front of the high wall. Francis went forward to greet the two soldiers who were guarding the gate. The two soldiers cooperated with each other and pulled the valve to open the passage. Francis left a saint to lead Dean through the passage. It was around 10 o'clock in the evening. Curfew time had arrived even in the bustling areas. Francis took Dean to the suburbs and went all the way. Dean breathed in the humid air of the wilderness. He felt relaxed, as if he was a fish returning to the sea. After more than an hour, Francis and Dean came to a small town on the outskirts of the western part of the commercial district. The town was dark, and most of the households had turned off the lights to sleep. Most of the people living in the suburbs were civilians. It was a luxury for them to burn oil lamps for the night. Francis tied the snow lion to a big tree outside the town. "Let's go in." Dean narrowed his eyes. He tied the snow lion to a big tree and followed Francis into the town. The wind was particularly strong at night. It blew into the streets of the town like the cries of ghosts. The people in the town had long been asleep. The cold wind accompanied Dean and Francis as they walked on the street, lifting up the fallen leaves. After Francis entered the town, he looked around as if he was looking for something. After a moment, his eyes locked on a relatively remote house. The house was quite simple, and there was not much difference between it and the house next to it. But Dadian noticed that Francis's eyes were attracted by a string of dried fish hanging on the house. His heart moved as he looked at the dried fish. He found that the dried fish was not an ordinary river fish, but a relatively rare blackwater fish. Blackwater fish had black spots all over their body. They lived by eating other small fish. They usually lived in the mud and were difficult to catch and fish. He took a deep look and turned to look inside the house. Using his thermal vision, he immediately saw that there were 4 extremely hot figures under this simple house. 2 of them were sleeping in the bedroom, and 2 of them were in the basement of the house. One of them was standing. While he was looking around, Francis walked to the door of the house with the blackwater dried fish hanging on the wall and gently knocked on the door. The 2 figures sleeping in the bedroom of the house immediately raised their heads, including the 2 people sleeping under the house, and looked over. Soon, a figure in the bedroom stood up, and the room was soon lit up by a dim yellow light. The lock behind the door was opened, and the door slowly opened, revealing an old face. The old man looked at Francis up and down and asked in surprise, "Who are you?" Francis whispered, "Dark eternal life." The old man's pupil shrank, and he was relieved. He immediately opened the door gently. His previously sleepy eyes flashed with intelligence. He glanced around and noticed Dean, who was wearing a mask. He whispered, "Come in." Francis stepped in and Dean followed closely behind. The old man waited for the two of them to enter before sticking his head out of the door and looking around. Seeing that the night was dark and no one was paying attention, he gently closed the door and locked it. At this time, another old woman walked out of the bedroom and bowed to Francis respectfully. "Greetings, Saint." Francis nodded. "Where is Carrie?" The old man closed the door and said, "Elder Carrie is below. Holy Envoy, please follow me." He held the oil lamp in his hand and led the way to the basement. He lit the lamp on the wall. The basement was a wine cellar. It was very spacious. Two figures were standing there. One was an old man, and the other was a young man. Francis smiled as he saw the old man. "Elder Carrie." The old man looked at his clothes. "Saint, please show your medal." Francis took out his saint medal and handed it over. The old man nodded and handed it back to him. His eyes swept to Dean. "Is this the new elder who will take over? He doesn't seem to be too old." Francis laughed. "You don't need to worry about it. Elder Carrie, please finish the handover as soon as possible. I'll take you back tonight." Carrie nodded and looked at Dean. "I have informed the elders about the handover and got a promise. You only need to report to the elders. Also give yourself a code name. Our dark church uses code names. Also, let me introduce you to my assistant Hawkeye. He will help you to understand your position in the dark church. I hope you can arrange a good place for him once you don't need him anymore." Francis pointed to the young man next to him. Dean looked at the young man. The young man didn't wear a mask. He had pure golden hair. He was extremely handsome and had a gentle expression. However, there was a hint of evil in his eyes. "Hello." Dean adjusted his voice. It was easy for him to control his Adam's apple and change his voice. "Hawkeye greets the elder." The young man nodded with a smile. Francis said, "In that case, I'll leave the rest to you. I'll wait for you here. Be sure to come back before 4 o'clock in the morning." Carrie nodded. He took out a mask from his robe and put it on. He looked at Dean. "Then let's go. I'll take you to the headquarters so that everyone can get familiar with you." Dean nodded. Chapter 461. Dean followed Carrie out of the town. There was a carriage parked outside the town. There was a flag on it. Dean recognized that it was the flag of Shire family. Shire family was a middle-level aristocratic family under the Scott Consortium. They were mainly engaged in the real estate business in residential areas. Dean didn't expect that they would have dealings with the dark church. Hawkeye acted as the coachman as they got on the carriage. "I called a carriage from the Shire family to cover for you." Carrie smiled. "The Shire family is one of the big families under us. You have to have good relations with them in the future." Dean silently nodded. He knew that many nobles had dealings with the dark church, but he didn't expect it to be so deep. He asked, "Was the house in the town our temporary stronghold?" Carrie nodded. "It is our high-level secret liaison office. The two elders you met are high-level intelligence personnel of the dark church. They have been in charge of intelligence for decades. You can ask them if you want to know anything, but don't use them easily in case their identity is exposed." Dean looked at him. "Were you transferred from the inner wall?" Carrie seemed to know what he was going to ask. "I am about to retire, so there is no harm in telling you the truth. I was originally entrusted by the monastery to be an elder, and now that I have completed my term, I will be promoted to an elder of the monastery's supervision department. From your voice, I can tell that you are still young. I hope you can hold on, and if you meet any of my students in the monastery in the future, you will be able to take care of them." Dean nodded. "I'll try my best." Carrie smiled. "You shouldn't trust anyone in the dark church besides Hawkeye. Don't expose your true identity to anyone. The people here are sinister. I hope you can take care of yourself." Dean was silent. He thought that he wouldn't trust even Hawkeye. The carriage entered the city. There were several patrolling guards along the way. It stopped in a remote area of the city. "Here we are." Carrie got off the carriage and tidied up his clothes. They came to a luxurious manor. The guards at the door were respectful as they saw Hawkeye hand out medal. They led the way for the three of them. When they arrived at the manor, a woman in a black suit stepped forward and waved her hand to dismiss the guards. She then saluted Carrie and said, "Greetings, Sir Elder." Carrie nodded slightly and said, "Little Crow, this is the new elder I mentioned." The woman in the black suit had long noticed Dean and immediately saluted. Greetings to the new elder. Duddy nodded as he remembered her appearance, voice, and smell. The woman in the black suit bowed and turned around to lead the way. They followed a dark passage in the manor to the basement. The basement was winding and had many hidden doors. After several forks, they arrived at a passage that was more than 10 meters deep. After walking straight for a while, they arrived at a spacious underground square. There was melodious music floating in the air. There were a lot of people of the Dark Church gathered in the square. Most of them were wearing masks. Only a few of them were staff of the Dark Church, so they didn't need to wear masks, because they no longer needed to live in the outside world. Krebby's arrival immediately caused a burst of exclamations. The people who were whispering all over the square suddenly gathered and saluted Krebby. Carrie smiled. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm about to retire. This is the new elder of the 9th region. Everyone warmly welcomed him. The crowd was surprised as they heard the news, but many of them got the news in advance. They showed a respectful smile and congratulated loudly. Welcome the new elder. Welcome. In a burst of applause and cheers, Dean nodded slightly as a greeting. Carrie waved his hand to signal the crowd to retreat. He led Dean to a towering hall at the back of the square. There were 2 lifelike, dark angel sculptures at the entrance of the hall. They were overlooking the people in the square. Carrie led Dean into the hall. The members of the Holy Church bowed from afar. They didn't straighten up until Carrie and Dean went up the stairs. This is the headquarters of the 9th region. It's also the place where I usually work. Carrie came to the 2nd floor of the castle. It was luxuriously decorated. The walls were inlaid with scarlet wallpaper, as if smeared with blood. The atmosphere was gloomy. Hawkeye stepped forward and pushed open a door. There was a spacious room inside. Carrie came into the room. This is my office. This desk is filled with documents from below. I've helped you deal with most of the recent matters. I'll leave the rest to you. Don't worry. With Hawkeye's help, I'll be able to help you. Duddy nodded and looked around, but the wide field of vision allowed him to see everything around him without looking around. Carrie saw that Dean was listening attentively. He smiled. We elders usually don't have much to do except to solve some necessary troubles and disobedient people. The rest of the time is very free. You're about to take office. This is the animal gloom mask prepared for you. You can change your face shape by needing it. Even if you don't have a mask in the future, you will be able to see people with the animal gloom mask. He took out a flat, delicate box from the drawer and handed it to Dean. Duddy was startled, as he didn't think that there would be such a magical thing. He looked at Carrie and found that there was no blood in the depths of his pores. No wonder Carrie dared to show his true face. It turned out that he was also using the animal gloom mask. This is exclusive to the elders. If you lose it, you have to promptly apply to the higher-ups. But the application procedures will be very troublesome. So don't lose it or give it to others. It's very troublesome to make. It's not sold outside. It's the top internal item of the Dark Church. Carrie said. Duddy nodded and took the things. Elder, what do you mean by the 9th region? Carrie smiled. You will know about this in the future. But since you have asked, I will tell you that the forces of the Dark Church and the outer wall are divided into 12 regions. The 9th region is under the control of 12 elders. The Hawkeye will give you a detailed introduction of the main scope and the forces that are in contact with our subordinates. I won't go into details. Dean understood and asked, will there be conflicts between our regions? Carrie glanced at him. It seemed as if he could see into the depths of Dean's eyes. Carrie smiled. Conflicts are inevitable. Small conflicts are left to be solved by themselves. Big conflicts need to be decided by the Council of Elders. So if you want to have a good life, then you need to have a good relationship with the Council of Elders. At present, the 12 districts are divided into 3 factions. I used to belong to the Night King's faction. Now that you have inherited my position, you can choose to join a new faction or choose not to join any faction. But my suggestion is to continue to follow the Night King's faction. Night King? Dean's eyes narrowed. Yes, the Night King is the code name of the 3rd Elder. He is in charge of the 3rd region. It's one of the best regions in the 12 regions. There are many alchemists and potion masters under his command. Many of them are 5-star great alchemists and even great potion masters. They are extremely terrifying. On the surface, he has connections with the Scott Consortium's Chai family and the Huashan Consortium's Jet family. He has an unfathomable voice in the Elders' Council. Chapter 462. Dean's eyes narrowed as he listened. The Scott Consortium's Chai family has a deep relationship with the Dark Church. The Melon Consortium can compete with the Scott Consortium, so there should be a strong Dark Church behind it. Dean's eyes lit up. There was no movement when the Melon Consortium disintegrated. Wait, is it the dark forces behind the Melon Consortium that tried to assassinate me in the Poison Soup and the Scarlet Grand Canyon? Dean's eyes flashed as he thought of this. There was a trace of killing intent in his eyes. Elder, the Night King has dealings with the Scott Consortium. So the other consortiums should have dealings with the other elders, right? Dean calmly said to Carrie. Carrie nodded and said, basically, but it's not clear who is in contact with whom. I've only heard some rumors, but I can't be sure. However, I know that the elders of the 12th and 7th districts are competing for the support of a new consortium. Now that you've taken office, you might as well give it a try. If you can win over this consortium, then our 9th district won't be so weak. Are you referring to the New World Consortium? Yes, it's the New World Consortium that destroyed the Melon Consortium. Carrie nodded. The New World Consortium had the support of the Genius Dean. They had swallowed the Melon Consortium, and all the industries have been seized. In a short period of time, they have grown rapidly. It is estimated that it won't be long before they replace the Melon Consortium and become the new big consortium. Although the genius behind them has been arrested by the inner wall, but they may be able to come out again in the future. Once they win over the New World Consortium, they may be able to get the favor of the genius in the future. Dean asked, I've heard about it. Elder, why did the inner wall arrest him? Carrie smiled. I heard that saints from a monastery were ordered to arrest him. They said that he was colluding with the Dark Church. In my opinion, this should be a false story. If he had the Dark Church's people behind him, then he would have used the Dark Church's power to destroy the Melon Consortium. But he didn't use the Dark Church's power in the process. Either he didn't have our people behind him, or he wanted to cover his relationship with the Dark Church, so he didn't use the Dark Church's power. Dean's eyes lit up as he pretended to be surprised. The monastery shouldn't be shooting without a goal. Since they said, so then there must be some evidence. Otherwise, why would they arrest him? Carrie looked at him. We can't come to a conclusion, but we know that the monastery has many motives to arrest him. You should know that the Genius Dean has created 2 legendary items in just 1 year. Moreover, he has created a brand new gas system, which has impacted the original 9 systems. Alchemists, potioneers, diviners, and other occupations of the Dark Church have a strong impact on the alchemists, pharmacists, diviners, and other occupations of the Dark Church. If we give him a few more years, then he will be above everyone in the outer wall. The inner wall has no reason to let such a dangerous existence grow. They have to kill him or win him over. Otherwise, it will be a disaster for other forces. The monastery is just casually looking for a crime. Their purpose is to send him to the inner wall. Dean pretended to ponder. If that is the case, then why don't they summon him openly? Carrie smiled. You think too simply. If they summon him openly, then the other forces of the inner wall will take a fancy to him. Then they can come over and make friends with him. If they arrest him, then they will have a reason to refuse other forces. So that's how it is. Dean was enlightened. I might be able to see him when I retire to the inner wall. I really want to see him with my own eyes. He should be a high-level figure if he is recruited by the monastery. Carrie said in an expectant tone. Dean's eyes lit up. Elder, are you from the inner wall? Carrie was surprised. Why do you ask? I see that you are very familiar with the inner wall. I'm not familiar with it. Carrie laughed. The monastery is the force behind the Holy Church. Why would I come to the outer wall if I'm from the inner wall? Isn't that too much to do? Dean was startled. So it is the first time for Elder to go to the inner wall? Yes, I have retired. The saint will take me to the Dark Parliament in the inner wall. Carrie laughed. Dark Parliament? Yes, the forces of the Dark Church in the inner wall are irreconcilable with the monastery. It's similar to the relationship between us and the Holy Church. Carrie smiled. Dean was startled. There was a trace of complex feelings in his heart as he looked at Carrie's smile. He would have believed his words if he didn't go to the inner wall and meet the elder of the monastery. But now it seemed that Carrie wasn't from the inner wall, but an elder of the dark church who was promoted from the outer wall. However, the monastery had a way to make an elder of the dark church trust them. Moreover, he had fabricated a lie about the dark parliament. Dean didn't know what would happen to Carrie after he entered the inner wall. Would he be obliterated halfway, or would he be used by the monastery again? He didn't think too deeply about it. There were too many possibilities. Perhaps what Carrie was saying now was just a pretense. You can ask Hawkeye if there is anything you don't understand. He is my confidant and absolutely trustworthy. Carrie patted Dean's shoulder. I'll leave the 9th region to you. If I have the chance to come back, I hope to see a prosperous 9th region. Dean nodded. I'm afraid you won't have the chance. Elder, what if the other elders collude with the Holy Church to frame us? What should we do? Dean asked. Carrie shook his head. It's too risky. If they're found to be colluding with the Holy Church, then they will be boycotted by the elders and kicked out. No one would dare to violate the rules. You shouldn't do such a thing either. Do you understand? Understood. Dean narrowed his eyes. Ever since the jailbreak incident, he didn't follow any rules. Carrie nodded. I'll go first if there's nothing else. Duddian nodded. He and Hawkeye sent him out of the manor. After Hawkeye left, they returned to the headquarters of the Dark Church in the 9th region. You go out first. I'm going to use the animal glue mask, Dean said. Hawkeye respectfully left the room. Dean glanced around the room, pulled up the sheets and bedding in the bedroom, and opened the flat box. Inside was a delicate and thin mask, as transparent as water. He gently sniffed it, but there was no smell. He thought for a moment and put it back into the box. After a while, he called Hawkeye, who was outside the door. Tell me about the situation in the 9th region. Duddian sat on the desk, still wearing the mask. Hawkeye looked at him and nodded. Elder, you are now an elder, so you can't use your previous code name. I hope that you can have a new code name in the future. Dean thought for a moment. The code name will be Nighthawk, the eagle with eagle eyes. Nighthawk? Hawkeye was startled. What? Nothing. It's just a coincidence. There's a 4-star alchemist in the 9th region who is called Nighthawk. Hawkeye said, Elder, you can change it. We can only cancel the code names of those who are below 2 stars. Dean raised his eyebrows and thought for a moment. Let's call him Devil. Devil? Hawkeye was stunned for a moment. I'll go back and check it out. If there is no one who is above 2 stars, then I'll cancel it for you. All right, Dean nodded. Let's report the situation here first. Hawkeye nodded and said, the territory of our 9th district is from Claw Street to Pusey Street in the west of the commercial district. In the commercial district, the residential district, and the slums, our manpower is mainly concentrated in the residential district where the Holy Church's control is loose and convenient for us to act. The main territories of the other elders are also concentrated in the residential district. But most of the 5-star alchemists and potion masters in the 9th region are active in the commercial district. We have 4 5-star alchemists, 2 great potioneers, and 1 great fortune teller. Chapter 463. Dean looked at the information handed over by Hawkeye. Hawkeye, do you also have animal glue mask? Dean casually asked as he looked at Hawkeye. Hawkeye respectfully replied, Elder is joking. Animal glue mask is very rare. We are not qualified to use it. The reason why I dare to show my true face is because I was born in an alchemist family. I was destined to walk this path from birth. It doesn't matter if I have a mask or not. You were born in an alchemist family? Dean was surprised. Hawkeye was trusted by the elder, so it was normal for him to have such a background. Which family are you from? Randy family. Hawkeye respectfully replied. Dean's eyes lit up. Is it the Randy family that created the human skin bonding alchemy technique 80 years ago? He had paid attention to the other big families of the Dark Church after he learned about the Inferno family. Randy family was one of them, but people like to call them by their nickname, Human Skin Family. Hawkeye respectfully replied, My great-grandfather was the one who created the human skin bonding forbidden technique. Dean didn't expect Hawkeye to have such an extraordinary background. No wonder Carrie valued him so much. I heard that your family's human skin adhesion technique allows you to glue other people's skin to your own body. It can be described as a top concealment technique. Dudian said. Hawkeye laughed. Elder, it's been many years. The human skin bonding technique is a forbidden technique. Our family doesn't dare to study it privately. That's why I don't know much about it. Dean didn't force him as he saw that Hawkeye didn't want to reveal more. 3 dark nights, 6 dark grand nights. There was a trace of surprise in Dean's eyes as he read the information. The Dark Knights were equivalent to the leaders of the senior hunters. Dark Grand Knights were comparable to ordinary senior hunters. In other words, there were 9 senior hunters under his command. That was 4 times more than the Melon Consortium. Of course, this didn't include the people secretly cultivated by the Melon Consortium. Is the 9th region strong or weak among the regions? Dean asked Hawkeye. Hawkeye respectfully replied, there are only 3 regions which are weaker than us. They are the 6th, 8th, and 11th regions. So it's relatively weak. Dean's heart was secretly awe-inspiring. Even a 9th region had such a defensive force. Wouldn't the other regions have even more? He estimated that there were hundreds of senior hunters in so many regions. This also meant that the Luminous Church's advanced hunter-level combat power would only increase. If we include the Saints, the power of the Mystic Sect is simply unfathomable. However, just the Demon Dragon clan alone has terrifying powerhouses like Meshali and the girl in the traditional Chinese dress. I'm afraid the hidden power of the Mystic Sect is even stronger. If we want to become the ruler of Sylvia, we still have to rely on our own strength. Instead of a group of pigs huddling together, we might as well become stronger. Dean's eyes lit up as he carefully looked at the information in his hand. His deified splitter had infinite potential. He had to improve his strength as soon as possible. In the huge office, the sound of pages flipping echoed in Dean's fingertips. The hourglass was slowly dripping. In the blink of an eye, more than 2 hours had passed. Elder, someone from the 3rd region has come to see you. Hawkeye respectfully reported to Dean. Dean was engrossed in reading the information. He frowned and pondered a little. Bring it in. Yes. Hawkeye turned and left. Dean's eyes narrowed as he gently rubbed his fingers. He's quite impatient. Hawkeye returned to the office. There were 2 people behind him. One was a middle-aged man wearing a gray cloak, and the other was a knight in black armor. Dean narrowed his eyes. He could see a fiery aura from the Black Knight's body. It was comparable to Gwyneth and the others. Greetings to the new elder. May I know your name? The middle-aged man wearing a gray cloak said in a respectful manner. Dean hadn't opened his mouth, but Hawkeye quickly said, Our new elder is codenamed Devil. There was a trace of strange expression on the middle-aged man's face, but it disappeared without a trace. He respectfully smiled. Greetings, Elder Devil. I've come under the order of my Master Knight King to visit you. I've heard that you have just taken office, so I've sent you a small gift. I hope you don't mind. He opened the package in his hand and handed it to Dean. There was a square box that was cast in gold. It was extremely exquisite. Dean glanced at the box in case it was contaminated with poison. He signaled to Hawkeye. Dean was in the Dark Church now. There were some lawless and vicious people here, so he had to be careful. Hawkeye's eyes lit up as he quietly opened the box. There was a small green porcelain bottle inside the box. The bottle was extremely thin and transparent. Dean could vaguely see the red liquid flowing inside the bottle. It was extremely beautiful. The middle-aged man smiled. Elder, this is a gift from my Master Knight King. It's made from the brain of an earth dragon beast. It has an incredible restorative effect. It can regenerate broken limbs. As long as there is a breath left, it can be saved. It's not an exaggeration to say that it's a second life. There was a trace of shock in Dean's eyes. He had heard about the fountain of life in the temple. It was one of the most precious items in the temple. It was out of stock all year round. After all, dragon beasts were extremely rare outside the giant wall. Moreover, their hunting level was extremely high. Even a young dragon beast had a hunting level of around 20. A mature dragon beast had a hunting level of 35 to 40. As for a mature dragon beast, it was even more terrifying. It was a war beast. It was almost comparable to the legendary monster Splitter. Although Earth Dragon Beast didn't have magic marks, but the value of its body wasn't inferior to most of the named monsters. The Night King actually has something that can't be bought in the temple. Dean was shocked by the power of the Night King, but he quickly recovered. He knew the intention of the Night King. He wanted to use the gift to win over the Night King. Moreover, he had just taken office, and the other party had already sent him a gift. First, it showed that he had a huge intelligence network. Second, he had just taken office. Not to mention gaining a firm foothold, he hadn't even fully understood the situation in the 9th District. Naturally, he didn't have the confidence and courage to refuse him. He was silent for a moment. He put away the rejuvenation fountain. "I'll accept this gift. Thank the Night King for me." The middle-aged man smiled. "In that case, I'll take my leave." Dean nodded. "Hawkeye, see them off." Hawkeye enviously looked at the golden box in Dean's hand. He withdrew his eyes and sent the middle-aged man and the knight out. After the three left the room, Dean opened the box, picked up the green bottle, and looked at it gently. This small bottle was a valuable work of art. He looked at the light red color inside, and his eyes narrowed slightly. "Such a good thing. It's a pity to send it to my mouth." Dean's mouth curved into a smile as he put away the rejuvenation fountain. He continued to read the information at hand. He must fully understand the 9th region as soon as possible. Dark Church, 3rd region. Night King, he has accepted your gift. The middle-aged man in a gray cloak respectfully knelt on the ground. In this cold and gloomy hall, there was a throne that emitted an iron-like chill. Sitting on it was a figure wearing a black robe and a black hat. He said in an ancient voice, "You just said that the codename of this new elder is Demon King." "Yes, Night King." "Well, this time the gift is too heavy." Chapter 464. The middle-aged man in the gray cloak was slightly startled. He carefully looked at the majestic figure shrouded in darkness on the throne above and said, "Lord Night Prince, although the spring of rejuvenation is expensive, it should not be too much of a loss to gain the allegiance of an elder, right? Naturally, it wouldn't be a loss if we can get his allegiance." The man on the throne indifferently said, "But this person claims to be the devil." "Oomph. The Holy Church calls us demons, so he calls himself the devil. How can such an ambitious person be willing to be subservient to others? He has just taken over the position of an elder, so his foundation is too weak to refuse. But if there is an opportunity in the future, he will be the king." The middle-aged man's complexion slightly changed. "Lord Night Prince, in that case, we might as well take the 9th region as our own before his wings harden. In this case, he can only be a lone commander if he wants to be the Demon King in the future. It's impossible, but we can't give the opportunity for the 9th region to grow. Otherwise, the balance between the three kings will be broken and the region will fall into chaos." The Night King said in a cold voice. Yes. The sky was bright. Dean was still in the office reading the information of the 9th region. He had a general understanding of the situation of the 9th region after one night of reading. The 9th region belonged to the lower middle level of the entire 12 regions of the Dark Church. Whether it was the number of followers, wealth, or force, the 9th region was far behind the other regions, especially the 3rd region, which was under the control of the Night King. The difference was like the clouds and the mud. "I didn't expect that the gap between the 12 regions would be so big. I don't know if the Night King is appointed by the monastery to supervise the deacon." Dean thought in his heart, "It doesn't matter if he has the same identity or not. According to the words of the elder of the punishment department, once exposed, he will either return to the inner wall or be sentenced to death. It doesn't matter what his identity is. In the future, he will be either a friend or an enemy." "Elder, did you call me?" Hawkeye pushed the door and came in. Dean nodded. "Call all the 5-star alchemists, great potion masters, diviners, dark knights. I want to hold a meeting." "Meeting?" Hawkeye was startled, but he quickly understood and nodded. "I will inform them." Dudian nodded and continued to read other information. These information also included the other 11 regions. They were the information collected by the previous elders. The 3 kings of the 12th region are the Night King of the 3rd region, the Sword King of the 1st region, and the Pluto King of the 5th region. The subordinates of the 3 kings are attached to other elders. In addition, the 2nd region, the 10th region, and the 12th region are not affiliated with the 3 kings. It seems that there should be a total of 4 factions. These 3 factions should take care of each other, but only to a certain extent. Dean's eyes flashed as he pondered. After a long while, Hawkeye came to report and said respectfully, "Elder, the 2 5-star alchemists from Stewart and Karina have arrived. They are waiting for you in the conference hall." Dean frowned as he looked at the hourglass. "Where are the others?" Hawkeye bowed his head and said, "Still on the way." "Are they usually this slow?" Dean frowned. Hawkeye quietly looked at him. "Elder, some of them are far away and some of them are busy. So it is inevitable that they will be slow." Dean noticed his eyes. His face turned cold. "What's the slowest gathering time in the past?" There was a trace of tension in Hawkeye's eyes. In the past, the slowest time was about 2.5 hours. "All right, an hour has passed. Let's wait for another 1.5 hours. Dean waved. "You go back and tell them to wait." "Yes." Hawkeye hesitated, but eventually held back and left. 1.5 hours passed. Hawkeye knocked on the door. "Come in." Hawkeye pushed the door and entered. He looked at Dean, who was sitting in front of the desk and reading the information. He bowed his head. "Elder, time is up." Dean's eyes moved from the information about the regional divisions and the number of grassroots personnel in the 9th region. He looked at Hawkeye. "Is everyone here?" Hawkeye hesitated. "Elder, there are 7 people who haven't arrived." 7? Dean's eyebrows rose. The total number of people in the meeting was 16. But at the moment, nearly half of them hadn't arrived. "All right." Dean got up. "Write down the names of those who haven't arrived and give them to me." Hawkeye said as he saw Dean's eyes. "Elder, it's the first time you have taken over, so it's inevitable that they want to put on airs. The impact on the 9th region will be too great if they join other regions. I hope you won't be impulsive." Dean was about to pass by him. He stopped and said in an indifferent voice, "Please remember one thing. In my territory, no one can put on airs with me." Hawkeye was stunned. Dean strode out of the room. Hawkeye turned around and followed Dudian. He stealthily looked at Dudian's eyes. He didn't see the anger in Dudian's eyes, but a pair of calm and deep eyes. Dean came to a spacious room on the left side of the 2nd floor. He saw 11 figures sitting in the room. 5 of them were exuding blazing heat. The remaining 6 were relatively dim, but slightly higher than the average person. However, there was something strange about their bodies. The heat distribution of their bodies was uneven. 2 of them had extremely hot arms, but the heat from their bodies was very dim. The other one had a red chest, but the heat from his limbs was average. "Elder, please." Hawkeye took the initiative to open the door and respectfully said to Dean. Dean entered the room. It was a very luxurious conference hall decorated with resplendent gold and jade. Even the tables and chairs were made of expensive materials. The style was extraordinary. It seemed like they were made by master craftsmen. As soon as the door was opened, the laughter in the conference hall came to an abrupt end. Everyone turned their heads or raised their eyes to look at Dean, who was standing at the door. When they saw the mask on Dean's face, some people frowned. Dean wasn't nervous in front of everyone's gaze, although he knew that all of them were big shots of the Dark Church. But he wasn't a child like he was a few years ago. He had seen the masters of the temple and was able to calmly deal with these occasions. He came to the conference hall and looked around. "Hello, everyone. I'm the new elder. My code name is Devil. I called all of you here because I want to have a few words." "Devil?" There was a trace of astonishment in everyone's eyes as they heard the overbearing code name. Soon, an enchanting woman sitting on a nearby chair immediately said, "Codename Demon King? Elder, do you know that in the 12 regions of the Dark Church, besides the 3 kings, no one dares to use the word king as their codename? Aren't you being a bit too ostentatious? Wouldn't our 9th region become the target of public criticism if the 3 kings misunderstood? Yes. Elder, your code name is too provocative. Change it. Two people at the side chimed in. Dean's eyes narrowed as he quietly waited for them to finish talking. He saw that no one else spoke. Today is the first day of our meeting, and you want me to change my code name? Is this your welcome ceremony? The three people's faces changed. The enchanting woman said, Elder, you misunderstood us. We don't mean anything else. It's just that your code name is too ostentatious. Our 9th region is in the middle level of the 12th region. If you make the three kings unhappy, then the consequences will be unimaginable. Dean stared at her. He could roughly judge from her clothing that she was a great potion master. He smiled. What will be unimaginable? The enchanting woman's face turned ugly as she saw the thorns in his words. Elder, I'm just being kind, I know. Dean interrupted her. The smile in his eyes instantly turned cold. He glanced at everyone. Today I called you over to talk about the future position and development of our 9th region. I only have one goal, and that is to be the strongest. As soon as he said that, the conference room immediately fell silent. Everyone was stunned as they looked at Dean. The strongest? A middle-aged man next to him smiled. Elder, you have just taken office. You may not know much about the situation here. Our 9th region, I understand. Dean interrupted him. I have seen the situation of the 9th region. I also know the information about the three kings. There is no way for us to compete with the three kings with our current ability, but we can develop and catch up with them. Don't tell me that you want to see the faces of the three kings. Do you want to swallow your anger when the resources are plundered? Hearing his words, everyone looked at each other. Based on the last sentence, they knew that Dean had done his homework. Of course we wanna, but it's extremely difficult to catch up to the three kings. With the resources and connections in our hands, even if they stagnate, it'll still take us 10 years to catch up. Another elder said helplessly to the side. Yes. The enchanting woman nodded and looked at Dean. Elder, since you have said so, what is your plan? It is better to talk less, so as to avoid the anger of the three kings. Our 9th region can't afford it. Dean indifferently said, the plan is very simple. Improve the curriculum of the academy and vigorously cultivate new 5-star alchemists and great potion masters. At the same time, train more dark knights. Hearing this, the enchanting woman was stunned, and she only reacted after a while. Her eyes widened as she said, Elder, you joking? Dean seriously said, Am I not? The enchanting woman didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Of course you are right. But the problem is that it takes more than a few years to cultivate a new 5-star alchemist or a great potion master or even a great diviner. Even if we are lucky enough to meet some talented students, it will take 7 or 8 years for them to have some achievements. If we want to cultivate new 5-star alchemists, then it will be good if we can produce 2 in 10 years. Don't think that it is too difficult. Dean indifferently said, I have my own way. Today I called you here to tell you that I hope you will seriously carry out the task that I will give you in the future. If the task fails due to personal reasons, then the consequences will not be what you want to see. Humph. A middle-aged man wearing a black cloak sitting at the end of the conference table slightly raised his eyes. His rough face was full of ridicule as he coldly looked at Dean. Ignorant. I really don't know why the higher-ups would appoint a person like you as an elder. It is ridiculous. What kind of profession do you think alchemists and potion masters are? Do you think that as long as they have God's blessing, everyone can become a dark knight? Ignorant. Dean's eyes narrowed as he quietly looked at him. What? Are you not convinced? The middle-aged man's eyes were full of cold arrogance as he looked directly at Dean. Dean knew where the man's confidence came from. As a dark knight, he was absolutely a high-level figure in his region. Even the elders had to be polite to him. Otherwise, he could defect to other regions at any time. Although it would have a certain impact on his reputation, and it would be difficult to defect a second time. But after all, there was room for freedom of choice. Moreover, his own strength and influence, as well as the dark knights that he commanded, would make it difficult for the elders to arrest him. This was the reason why a dark knight was so awesome. Is there anything else you want to say? Dean asked. The middle-aged man coldly snorted. I came here today to give you some face. I didn't expect that the new leader would be a good-for-nothing. His feet haven't even stabilized yet, and he dares to challenge the three kings. If I knew it would be like this, I might as well sleep at home and waste my time. Dean was still quietly looking at him. The middle-aged man's face turned ugly as he saw that Dean didn't speak. His eyes became more gloomy. What? Don't you have anything to say? Since you have finished, I will say it. Dean slowly said, You just said that it is very difficult to train alchemists and dark knights. Indeed, it is very difficult for you. Otherwise, the ninth region wouldn't be in the middle or lower position for so many years. But from today onwards, the ninth region will be under my control. You only need to do the tasks that I give you, and in half a year, the ninth region will become one of the top 5 regions. And I will become the new king. I'll leave my words here. You can choose not to believe me, but regardless of whether you believe me or not, I'll only say this once. If anyone fails to complete the mission I've given them due to personal reasons or colludes with other districts, I won't let them off lightly. Everyone was surprised, including the enchanting woman and the middle-aged man. They didn't expect Dean's tone to be so big. Middle-aged man frowned. There was some dissatisfaction in his heart, but as he saw Dean's confident look, he held back the sarcasm in his heart. After all, half a year would pass quickly. If the newly appointed elder didn't have a little bit of confidence, then there was no reason for him to say such big words. If he broke his promise to everyone, then his prestige as an elder would be lost. The middle-aged man believed that Dean was aware of the consequences. No matter what, he was sent by the higher-ups to be an elder. He should have the brains to think about it. Elder, do you have any plans? The old man next to him asked curiously. Dean replied, Of course. Elder, we will believe you for the time being. The enchanting woman glanced at the crowd and said to Dean. There wasn't the slightest joy in Dean's eyes. He turned to look at Hawkeye. Have you written the list of people who didn't come? Yes. Hawkeye respectfully handed over the list. Chapter 465. Hawkeye was stunned. Cancel all their positions? The people in the conference hall who were whispering to each other turned to look at Dean in shock. Dean raised his eyebrows. Didn't you hear it? Hawkeye was shocked. He finally knew that he wasn't hallucinating. He hurriedly said, Elder, they're all counselors of the 9th District. I'm afraid, Dean indifferently said. You have misunderstood. I'm talking about canceling all their positions, including their glorious titles. It doesn't matter if they were 5-star alchemists, potions masters, or dark knights. If they want to regain their position, they have to reapply for the exam. Hawkeye was dumbfounded as he looked at Dean. The people around him were dumbfounded. After a while, the middle-aged man from before was the first to react. He slammed his thick, callous palm on the table and stood up angrily. Are you kidding me? They didn't have time to attend today's meeting because they had something to do, and you want to revoke their positions? Do you know what you're doing? You're canceling their identities. Do you want to destroy the 9th region? Dean's eyes narrowed. He turned to look at him. First of all, don't make me feel like you're making noise when you talk to me. I will forgive you this time, but don't do it again. Don't do it again. Second of all, the previous elder Carrie has retired and the new elder has come. Carrie should have informed you about this and completed the handover work. In that case, they should know how to use today's time. Moreover, even if they have something to do, they should at least send someone to apologize and record the contents of the meeting. But they didn't. Middle-aged man angrily said, I don't care what the reason is. You can't cancel their positions, even if they didn't come. It's tantamount to forcing them to betray the 9th region. You are digging your own grave. Dean shook his head and waved to him. Come here. The middle-aged man's face was full of anger as he strode in front of Dean. What do you want? Look at this. Dean raised his right hand and slowly clenched his fist. When the middle-aged man heard his words, his gaze subconsciously fell on his right fist, and his face sank. Just as he was about to speak, his vision suddenly blurred, and he was shocked in his heart. He instinctively raised his hand to block, but his speed was a beat too slow, and it wasn't just a beat. Bang! A sharp pain suddenly blossomed in his abdomen. His body curled up like a shrimp, and his feet were lightly lifted off the ground. He couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. His body slowly floated down like a light snowflake. The sharp pain spread throughout his body like a cramp. He covered his abdomen and couldn't muster any strength in his body. It was as if all his bones had dispersed, and it was difficult for him to even stand. Dean didn't know when he put away his fist. He took out a white handkerchief and gently wiped the dirt on the back of his hand. He threw the handkerchief on the man's body. Don't think that you can be unscrupulous because you are a dark knight. Carrie needs your protection, but I don't. This is the first time, but the second time it won't be as simple as pain. The conference hall was silent. Everyone's eyes almost protruded out as they looked at the scene in shock. Middle-aged man tightly pressed the table to support his body and didn't fall down. He clenched his teeth to restrain himself from screaming, but his head was full of sweat. After a little while, the pain was slightly alleviated. He reluctantly looked up at Dean. There was a trace of anger and fear in his eyes. He knew that if Dean had a dagger in his hand, then he would have fallen at the moment. Everyone here is a smart person, so you are well aware of the situation. Dean faintly smiled. Don't tell me that the 6 of them didn't come. Their purpose is nothing more than to give me, the new elder, some color to see. Unfortunately, I don't like the color of arrogance. In my territory, you have to abide by my rules. Whoever doesn't abide by them will be kicked out by me. Everyone's face changed. They were barely able to maintain their calmness, but their eyes were full of surprise. Obviously, no one thought that the newly appointed elder would be so strong. Moreover, the strength that he had shown had shocked everyone. Some even suspected that the middle-aged man was bribed by Dean in advance. Maybe he had colluded with Dean to put on this play. While I'm in charge of the 9th District, if anyone betrays me and defers to another elder with their resources and intelligence, believe me, I will use all the power of the 9th District to kill them. Dean's eyes were cold as he glanced at everyone. He didn't pay any attention to them as he left the conference room. Hawkeye was stunned for a few seconds, but quickly followed him. The cold and tense atmosphere in the conference room relaxed after Dean left. Everyone felt that the pressure brought by the new elder was far stronger than that of the previous elder. Tom, are you okay? The enchanting woman asked. The middle-aged man, who was leaning on the table, took a deep breath. The pain in his abdomen had gradually reached a bearable level. He reached out his hand and said, I'm fine. At the same time, he looked outside the conference room in the direction of Dean's departure. A trace of deep fear flashed in the depths of his eyes. No matter how much strength was used to hit the abdomen, it was impossible to cause such a strong pain. Unless a special method was used to hit a special meridian, it would cause such a lasting and severe pain. This alone was enough to show that the latter's strength was better than his. However, the number of people in the entire outer wall who could easily defeat him wouldn't be more than 2 hands. I didn't expect that our new elder would be a strong fighter. An old man with a sharp beard had a gloomy expression on his face. There was a slanted scar on his face, which made his gloomy face look even more ferocious. He deliberately reminded Tomac to watch his fist, but he still defeated him easily. His purpose is to intimidate us. The power he showed is probably comparable to the Archangel of the luminous Vatican. When did such a monster appear in the Dark Church? How come we haven't heard any news about him? It's really strange. Another old man frowned. The enchanting woman stroked her cheek with a strand of hair in her hand and said softly, Every time an elder is appointed by the higher-ups, every elder has an amazing background and strength. In my opinion, this elder of ours is not simple at all. He dared to give himself the codename Demon King as soon as he took office. This is definitely not a spur-of-the-moment decision, but a deliberate show for the 3 kings. Since he has the guts to provoke the 3 kings, he most likely has a foundation that we don't know about. Yes, under his leadership, the 9th District might really become one of the top 5 districts in half a year. If I have enough resources, my alchemy warlocks may be able to go a step further and produce the Stone of Eternity. Humph, don't be happy too early. It's just strength. In the dark church, strength is the least valuable thing. Don't be too blind. Hawkeye followed Dean back to his office. Elder, do you really want to directly dismiss these 6 people? There are 2 5-star alchemists, 2 knight commanders, 1 great knight, and 1 great potion master. If we directly cancel their honor and position, then the implications will be too big. Some of them are from aristocratic families, and some of them are backed by nobles. If they leave the 9th region, then the nobles behind them will withdraw their investment. The loss would be too great. Dean snorted. I'll use 100% of my strength to suppress them. The subordinates should obey the superiors. This is the basic principle of the system. It's not about the superiors trying to please the subordinates. Hawkeye bitterly smiled and said, but although we can suppress them in this way, it's not worth it. We still have softer means. Violence is the most effective method. Dean waved his hand. Go out. Hawkeye was speechless. He turned and left. The inner wall. The monastery. Interesting. Did he really say that? There was a faint smile on the elder's face. Become one of the top 5 regions in half a year. It seems that he is tactful and didn't say that he would be first. A ghost-like shadow whispered, isn't he too high profile? Should we go and remind him? No need. The elder shook his head slightly. He's been low-key enough. Otherwise, with his strength, it would be easy for him to make the 9th region the strongest region in half a year. He knows that we are watching him, so he didn't rush for quick success. Moreover, he declared himself as the king, opposing all the other camps. This is to tell us that he will follow our orders and do his job well. He will make trouble for the other camps. That's enough. The corner of the elder's mouth twitched. He had declared himself as the king and dismissed 6 high-level members of his own region. Was this low-key? You can go back. The elder smiled. The outer wall will be very lively in the next 6 months. I hope that he can keep it up. If he is sincere, then it won't be a problem to let him be the next pope. Pope! Shadow's pupils shrank as he bowed his head. It seemed that he didn't hear anything. This subordinate will retire. His figure disappeared from the office. The elder looked at the door that was opened and closed. There was a smile on his face. Chapter 466. What? I was removed from all my positions? In a noble castle with an extraordinary style, in an empty room with cold light, the fair-skinned and slender Angelia looked at her confidant in front of her in disbelief. Her mature face was full of shock. Your Excellency, the news is true. The young man who was half kneeling on the ground bowed his head and said, in addition to you, the other 5 counselors who didn't go to the meeting were also ruled to be deprived of their counselor status and all their positions, including their original identity. They must pass the professional examination again before they can be awarded a new medal. The headquarters has sent someone to collect your 5-star alchemist badge, and they are still on the way. Others were also removed. The shock on Angelia's face deepened. Was the new elder trying to force all of them to rebel by removing 6 counselors and depriving them of their identities? She took a deep breath and looked at the youth. Tell me the details. What is the identity of the new elder? He dares to be so arrogant. The young man lowered his head and said, the new elder's code name is Demon King, and his origin is unknown. According to the news, he defeated the leader of the Dark Knights, Tomark, with 1 punch during this meeting, showing his extraordinary power. Although some people speculated that he might be colluding with Tomark to put on a show, the other 5 people who were dismissed this time include the leader of the Knights, Koz, and Grand Knight Limon. They are Tomark's close friends and students, so the possibility of Tomark acting is not high. Self-proclaimed Demon King. He defeated Tamakaw with 1 punch. Angelia's pupils contracted. She took a deep breath and said, is he going to go against the 3 kings the moment he steps onto the stage? He could defeat Tamakaw with 1 punch. His physique should have reached the limitless level. He should have a lot of connections in the inner wall. Otherwise, it's impossible to reach the limitless level by relying on God's blessing. The youth bowed his head and didn't speak. The shock on Angelia's face gradually calmed down. She rolled her eyes and pondered. Every elder has been carefully selected by the higher-ups. Since this person has such confidence, he must have a pretty good trump card. Thinking of this, the anger in her heart dissipated, and she said to the young man, "Prepare a generous gift immediately. I'm going to the headquarters personally." The youth was startled. He didn't expect such an arrogant person to bow her head. "Yes. You want to take back my grand potion apothecary medal? Is he crazy?" In a room of a luxurious castle, Amy, who was as lively and beautiful as a 16 or 17-year-old girl, stared at her trusted maid in disbelief. Soon, the shock in her eyes turned into anger and resentment. She clenched her white and tender fingers tightly and said through gritted teeth, "What's so great about defeating Tamaka? No one can resist my magic potion." Hearing her words, the maid lowered her head and said respectfully, "You're right. Even if he's a god, he can't resist the erosion of your magic potion." "That's right." Amy coldly snorted, her eyes flashing with hatred. "I wanted to teach him a lesson, but he actually dared to directly revoke my position as a councilman and my identity." "Humph! Does he really think that we have nowhere else to go besides the Ninth Region? Since you want to force me, I'll use your head as a prize and present it to Lord Hell King." The trusted maid said respectfully, "With my lord's talent and attainments in potions, you will definitely be recognized by His Majesty Pluto." "Humph, of course. If it weren't for Carrie, I would have gone long ago." Amy snorted coldly. The news spread like wildfire after the end of the meeting. At the same time, Dean received Hawkeye's report in the headquarters. "Elder, Sword King, and Pluto have sent you a gift. They are waiting outside." Dean was reading the information in his hand. It wasn't the information of the Ninth Region, but some confidential files that he could read as an elder of the Dark Church. He had finished reading the information of the Ninth Region and other regions last night. He was too lazy to look up as he heard Hawkeye's report. "Ask them what the gift is. If it isn't expensive, then directly call them." Hawkeye smiled bitterly. He had seen the reality and straightforwardness of the new elder. Senior hunters are at the bottleneck. They use some potions to stimulate the body and exert the power of the limitless. God's blessings are limited to hunters. Moreover, the God's marrow, which is used by the limitless, doesn't flow into the outer wall and can only be bought in the inner wall. Dean frowned as he read through the files. His original plan was to rely on God's blessing to improve his physique to the peak as soon as possible. But now it seemed that it wasn't realistic. It was no wonder that it was difficult to meet saints in the outer wall. The inner wall controlled most of the resources and held the key to the supreme level. It was because of this monopoly that the inner wall could easily suppress the outer wall and even enslave the outer wall. It seems that I have to find a channel to get the God's marrow from the inner wall if I want to improve my strength. Dean's eyes lit up. It was easy to be detected by the monastery if he relied on the channel of the Dark Church. He had to use other methods. But there was a side wall in the inner wall. There was only one way to enter the inner wall. That was the supply team of the Monster Research Institute in the inner wall that provided the blessings of God to the outer wall. Let's try from the supply team. If it doesn't work, then I have to use the old method of sneaking over the wall. Dean thought. Hawkeye came back. "Elder, they gave us whirling stone and beauty wine." The whirling stone is an alchemy item. It is very rare and very difficult to refine. Only 5-star alchemists have a very small chance to extract it. It has a very high collection value and is loved by the nobles. It can be used to make friends with the nobles. The beauty wine is one of the most famous treasures in the hands of the Nether King. It is a top-notch potion created by the great potion apothecary Suber. Just a drop of it mixed in the well water can easily poison tens of thousands of people to death. If it is consumed directly, it will immediately cause death. The only drawback is that it has the fragrance of red wine. Dean replied, "It is a third-rate thing. Return it. You can buy beauty wine outside. Go back and buy some, and let our great potion master analyze it. Let's see if he can figure out the formula." Chapter 467. All right, Dudian casually said, "Pick a few outstanding potion masters and set up a research group. Give them the rest of the beauty wine. I'll write down the analytical formula and give it to them. Let them follow the formula." Analytical formula? Hawkeye was surprised. "Do you understand potions?" Dudian waved his hand as he didn't want to waste time with him. Hawkeye responded and turned back. Dudian took out a piece of paper and wrote down the distillation method and chromatography method. He threw it to the side. He didn't intend to delve into the field of poison analysis. In fact, he didn't even think about how to run the 9th region. The 12 districts of the Dark Church, no matter which district, in the end, is just a chess piece in the hands of the monastery. Moreover, it's just a stepping stone for the Holy Church. No matter how good one's performance is, they can only be called the king on the chessboard. Their whole life is controlled by others. If they immerse themselves in it and enjoy it, that's the greatest tragedy and stupidity. If you want to get rid of the control, then you have to cut off the player's fingers. Dudian's eyes flashed with a trace of coldness. The monastery made him return to the outer wall. It would be the most regretful thing for the monastery in the future. This time he would make good use of the resources and time in his hands. He would build enough strength to compete with the inner wall before the next crisis came. This power didn't come from the Dark Church nor the Holy Church. Even if he used the entire power of the outer wall, they wouldn't be able to compete with the inner wall. He had to use the power outside of the chessboard to overturn the chessboard. He called Hawkeye, who was outside. "Elder." Hawkeye held the list of potion masters in his hand as he looked at Dudian. He didn't know what the new elder wanted him to do. Hawkeye had a little fear in his heart. The new master had a completely different style from Carrie. One was arrogant, while the other was low-key and cautious. Dudian asked, "How many God's blessings do we have in the warehouse?" Hawkeye didn't understand. "I haven't counted it recently. But the last time I counted, it was enough to upgrade 7 intermediate knights to grand knights." "What do you mean?" "I want all of them." Dean glanced at him. "Don't end your sentence with a question." Hawkeye's heart jumped, bowed his head, and said, "Yes. Go. Bring it to me as soon as possible." Dean said, "In addition, if there is a sale on the market, buy it. Don't worry about money. Tell me when there is a shortage." "Yes." Hawkeye nodded, but he was secretly surprised. He knew that the new elder was ready to make a big move. He did not dare to neglect and quickly left. Not long after, Hawkeye returned to the headquarters. Several dark knights brought huge black boxes to Dean's room. Hawkeye respectfully said, "Sir, these are the blessings of God in the warehouse. There are also some left for the basic daily mission expenses of the 9th District. Do you want me to take them for you?" "Not for now." Dean got up and opened a black box. It was full of old-fashioned syringes. The syringes were filled with a pink liquid, like diluted blood. It was God's blessing. Hawkeye looked at Dean's expression. He waved to the Dark Knights who were responsible for the transportation and signaled them to leave. Hawkeye carefully looked at Dean after all the people left. "Elder, is there anything else you want me to do?" "No, you can go out." Dean squatted down and gently stroked the old-fashioned syringes. Hawkeye looked at him and left the room. He closed the door and saw Dean put back a syringe of God's blessing into the box. Click! The door was closed. Dean picked up the syringe of God's blessing and rolled up the sleeve of his right arm. He pondered for a moment before inserting the syringe into his blood vessels and slowly injecting it into his body. He had learned the knowledge of the old era, so he knew about the serious consequences of blood-type conflict. He knew about the abnormal changes caused by the genetic conflict. He felt a chill when he first saw the so-called God's blessing when he was a scavenger. He always felt that this thing was extremely imperfect. Moreover, it was hiding something terrible or a conspiracy. He couldn't believe that the giant wall world could solve the problem that couldn't be solved in the old era. However, with the passing of the years, as well as the years of contact and understanding, he knew that absorbing the blessings of God was the only way to become stronger, even if the ultimate price was destruction. Previously, he had the magic marks of the infected, so he could take a shortcut and directly absorb the cold crystals to enhance his strength. But the price was the loss of feeling in his left hand. Now that he didn't have the magic marks of the infected, he could only rely on the God's blessing created by the Monster Research Institute. I don't know what kind of secret is hidden in the Monster Research Institute, Dean secretly thought as he injected the syringe of God's blessing into his arm. Very soon, a tube of God's blessing was injected into his arm. He felt that his arm was a little cold, as if a stream of ice had entered his body. However, the cold soon turned into a burning sensation, as if something was being torn apart. This blazing heat appeared very quickly and disappeared just as quickly. In the blink of an eye, everything returned to normal. Dean looked at the needle hole in his arm and continued to inject the second syringe of God's blessing. With his current physique, he could still feel the burning sensation after absorbing God's blessing, which meant that it was still effective. From the evolution point of view, he had just been promoted to senior hunter level, so the God's blessing could still satisfy the desire of the cells. Soon the second syringe of God's blessing was injected into his arm, and the burning sensation appeared again. Dean didn't stop, but continued to absorb until he injected 18 syringe of God's blessing. In addition to the burning sensation, there was a slight swelling pain in his arm. He immediately stopped the absorption. According to the instructions of God's blessing, this was a sign of short-term saturation. If he continued to inject the syringe of God's blessing, it would cause the capillaries to rupture. If he continued to inject the syringe of God's blessing, then it would cause internal bleeding and damage to the important organs. I can absorb about 20 syringe of God's blessing at a time. Dean felt that his strength had obviously increased a lot, but compared to his overall strength, it was very weak. A normal senior hunter needed to absorb tens of thousands of syringe of God's blessing to reach the limit of senior hunter. It will take a few hours for me to continue to absorb. On average, I can absorb 3 syringe of God's blessing a day. According to the calculation of 18 syringe of God's blessing each time, it will take about 5 months to absorb tens of thousands of syringe of God's blessing. Dean's eyes flashed as he calculated in his mind. His physique would reach the limit of senior hunter level in half a year. At that time, he would be able to show the strength of the splitter magic marks, which would be further enhanced. At least he would be able to surpass Francis, who was the captain of the Saints. This kind of speed of improvement was considered slow for him, but this was the normal efficiency of the people in the outer wall and even the inner wall. Even if there was a continuous supply of resources, it was impossible to become fat in one bite. Otherwise, it would be too terrifying. Any big consortium or family could hoard enough resources and create more than a dozen strong people in an instant. The battle would be completely chaotic. Dean's eyes fell on the syringe of God's blessing in the box. He picked one up and carefully observed it. Cold crystal can also enhance the physique, although the sequelae are serious, but it proves that cold crystal does have a physical enhancement component. God's blessing should be extracted from the syringe of God's blessing. But the characteristic of cold crystal is that it absorbs heat and turns into ice. I don't know what the pink substance is and where it came from. Aisha said that she was able to climb over the wall of size when she was 8 or 9 years old. So the Dragon Clan should have a special method to improve people's strength quickly. Otherwise, it would be impossible for a newborn child to inject God's blessing every day. Moreover, a baby can only withstand 1 syringe of God's blessing at the age of 8 or 9. It's impossible for her to climb over the wall of size by relying on God's blessing alone, unless she has wings like me. But it doesn't look like she is hiding her wings. Devil family, Dean's eyes flashed. There was a trace of unwillingness in his heart. He would be able to speed up his growth if he could get the secrets of the Monster Research Institute or the Devil family. However, there was the Psi wall. Even if he could sneak into the inner wall, it would be difficult to sneak into the Monster Research Institute and steal their secrets, not to mention sneaking into the Devil family. Chapter 468. Elder, 5-star alchemist Angelia has come to see you. Hawkeye's voice echoed from outside the room. Dean returned to his seat. Let her in. The door was pushed open after a moment. Hawkeye led Angelia into the room. Angelia was wearing a black dress and white cotton gloves. Dean didn't raise his head to see the appearance of the five-star alchemist. What made him slightly raise his eyebrows was that the information showed that this woman was over 60 years old, but looking at her appearance, there was no shadow of a 60-year-old woman. She was a mature and beautiful young lady. However, thinking of her identity as a life alchemist, Dean was surprised. He looked up at her. If it wasn't necessary, he didn't want to expose any of his abilities. Even if it wasn't a full-range view, he didn't want to expose any of his abilities. "Greetings, Elder." Angelia bowed her head and smiled. Her eyes inadvertently glanced at Dean. She quietly remembered his appearance. Her heart was full of surprise. She could feel that the new elder didn't seem to be old. His body exuded a strong vitality. Dean wore a mask. His eyes were indifferent. "I accept your apology. You can go back. Everything will be fine as long as you follow the rules." Angelica didn't expect Dean to be so direct. She responded with an elegant smile. "Elder, you are really a straightforward person. I didn't attend the meeting today because I was delayed by something. I hope Elder can forgive me. This is a small gift that I have prepared for you. I hope Elder won't reject it." She handed over a delicate gift box and put it on Dean's table. Dean glanced at it but didn't touch it. "All right, you can go back." Angelia's eyes turned. "Elder, I heard that you want to make the 9th region one of the top 5 regions in 6 months. Do you have any objections?" Dean looked at her. Angelia replied, "No, I just admire Elder's courage. If there is anything I can do for you in the future." Dean waved his hand, too lazy to be polite. Angelia smiled awkwardly and left. Hawkeye looked at Dean after sending off Angelia. "Elder, Angelia has come to apologize. Shouldn't she be reinstated?" Dean glanced at him. "Will I be forgiven if I apologize?" The only function of an apology is to highlight the existence of forgiveness, and in my case, forgiveness has never appeared. Hawkeye's face slightly changed as he bowed his head. "Sir, this subordinate knows his mistake. Go ahead." Dean waved his hand. Hawkeye bowed his head and left the room. Time flew by. 2 more people came after Angelique. One was a dark knight, and the other was a grand knight. They came to apologize and beg Dean to restore their positions. However, Dean refused and asked them to retake the exam. In reality, retaking the exam wasn't difficult. What was difficult was that they couldn't regain their lost face. Not long after the 2 left, another person came. 09, small, say, net. Amy greets the elder. Amy stood in front of Dean's desk with a smile on her face. Her body was full of vitality. Dean's eyes were dull as he didn't look at her delicate and peerless cheeks. According to the information, the woman was older than Angelia. She was in her 70s. She had taken some potions and used life alchemy to maintain her figure and appearance. However, it was only the appearance. The lifespan that the life alchemist could bring was limited. "Speak." Dean went straight to the point. Amy gently looked at Dean and smiled as she took out a porcelain bottle from her sleeve. "This is my latest development. Ordinary people will be as strong as a bull after using it. Moreover, they won't feel pain. I'm going to give the formula to the headquarters." She handed the porcelain bottle to Dean. Dean looked at the porcelain bottle and was about to reach out to take it. However, he saw that Amy's eyes flashed as he looked at the porcelain bottle. There seemed to be a trace of joy in her eyes. He lowered his arm, squinted his eyes, and looked straight at the young woman who looked like a great potion master. Amy was surprised. She didn't expect Dean to suddenly stop her plan. She looked at Dean's eyes, and her heart skipped a beat. But the experience brought by the years had already made her calm. She smiled and said, "Elder, why do you look at me like that?" Her cheeks flushed as she said. She was as shy as a girl who fell in love for the first time. Dean resisted the urge to vomit as he looked at Hawkeye. "You can have it. I don't need it." Hawkeye had been following Carrie for a long time, so he had learned how to read people's expressions. He felt a trace of subtlety from Dean and Amy's expressions. "Thank you, Elder." As he spoke, he stepped forward to receive it, but as he did so, he took out a handkerchief from his bosom and wrapped it around his hand, saying it would be bad if such a precious thing got dirty. Amy's heart sank as she put away the small porcelain bottle. I'll give you another one if you don't like it. Dean felt that his guess was confirmed. His eyes flashed, and he said in a cold voice, "Since you have given it out, how can you take it back? Hand it over." Amy's face changed as she bit her lower lip. "Elder, how can you bully me like this?" Dean's eyes were indifferent. He didn't soften because of her charming expression. "Do you want to keep the bottle or your hand?" "You." Amy's face turned ugly. It was obvious that Dean had seen through her thoughts, but she didn't know how he knew. She was angry and scared. "Elder, you can't do this to me. I just didn't come today. Hawkeye, take her down." Dean shouted. Hawkeye's mouth was bitter. He didn't want to provoke a potion master. She was definitely a viper. But because of Dean's order, he could only bite the bullet. "Master Amy, hand over the thing." Amy gritted her teeth. "Try and touch me." Hawkeye smiled bitterly. "I have long heard that your whole body is poisonous. Every thread of your dress is made of silk mixed with spider silk and soaked in venom. I don't have the antidote, so how could I dare to touch you? It's good that you know." Amy's face was gloomy. "Why are you doing this to me?" Dean indifferently said. "Are you still holding on to the last glimmer of hope? You want to poison me to death and seek refuge with a new master? You want to take my head to claim credit? I'll give you one last chance. Tell me your value, and maybe I'll let you live." Amy's face changed as she heard Dean say old life. She was so angry that her face was distorted. She clenched the porcelain bottle tightly. "You damn bastard! You're lucky that you didn't fall into my trap. If I had known earlier, I would have directly pounced on you and let you have a taste of the rotten intestines poison. Do you dare to kill me? You won't shed a tear until you see the coffin." Dean sneered, grabbed a pencil from the table, and threw it at him. With a thud, the pencil suddenly hit Amy's hand that was holding the porcelain bottle, piercing through her wrist. Amy screamed in pain, and the porcelain bottle in her hand fell to the ground. It shattered with a bang, and the inside was filled with powder. She hugged her hand and screamed like a pig being slaughtered. Her voice was loud and ear-piercing. It seems that no matter how beautiful a person is, their screams are equally unpleasant, Dean said to Hawkeye. Hawkeye was stunned and smiled. Chapter 469. Big Secret. There was no anger in Dean's voice. He took out a sharpened pencil and gently played with it. "I don't like to listen to lies. It's equivalent to wasting my time." Amy clenched her teeth as she endured the pain in her wrist. There was a trace of hatred in her eyes as she said, "I know that one of the bishops in the Holy Church is a member of the Dark Church. Moreover, his position here is not low. If we expose his identity to the Holy Church, then the Holy Church will definitely investigate us. This will make the Holy Church lose a general, and the other regions lose a chess piece." She stared at Dean. There was a pitiful look on her face, but there was sincerity. Dean shook his head. He wasn't interested in such news after coming into contact with a monastery, not to mention the problem of a bishop. The old pontiff was the supreme speaker of the Dark Church. Such news was useless to him. The old pontiff should know the identity of the bishop better than anyone else. He didn't pick out the bishop. Most of the time, it would be used as a negative example. He would let the bishop play its value at the right time. All the small movements were under the watch of the old pope. He was also under the watch of the monastery. The only pitiful thing was that the believers were loyal to their faith and the Dark Church. They were fighting each other for their God. They didn't know that the God they believed in was just an illusion written by the missionaries of the monastery to enslave them. "Is this it?" Dean twirled the pencil, cold light flowing on his fingertips. Amy was startled. She had been staring at Dean's eyes, but found that when she said the shocking news, the latter did not respond at all. Even his eyes flashed with a trace of disappointment. She asked, "Elder, do you know about this news?" Dean glanced at her. "There is no way to distinguish whether the news is true or false. If my guess is right, then the bishop is not the elder you want to rely on. The next step will be for you to give out the district he is from. I will think that I have the evidence of the elder and negotiate with him. It will be best if there's a conflict so that you can rely on the new elder. You can also retaliate against me, right?" Amy's expression changed slightly as she hastily said, "How could that be? Elder, you're thinking too much. This news is absolutely true. I have conclusive evidence. Let's talk about something else." The pencil in Dean's hand gently tapped on the table. Amy's words came to an abrupt end. Amy's expression changed for a moment before she said, "Elder, if you punish me, then our ninth region will lose a great potion apothecary. There aren't many potion apothecaries in the ninth region. You just take an office, and everyone is eyeing you covetously. You can't weaken yourself like this. I can make up for my mistake by developing a great potion apothecary within a month. I'll also sell the formula to you at the lowest price. It seems that you don't know me. I only want everything." Dean waved to Hawkeye. She attacked an elder. "Take her to prison and configure a set of tools for a great potion master. Let her study in prison." Hawkeye was stunned as he looked at Dean. He didn't expect Dean to be so ruthless. Amy's eyes widened. "You want to imprison me? You have no right to do so. Do you know my relationship? You want to imprison me for such a small matter?" "No, right?" Dean indifferently said. "I'm sorry. The ninth region used to have a parliamentary system. But from now on, it will be my dictatorship. I know your relationship with several families and consortiums. You have committed a crime. I want to see if they dare to yell at me because of you. You are just a great potion master. Don't think too highly of yourself." Amy's face was pale as her body trembled. She stared at Dean. "You can't do this to me. I can promise you other things, but you can't imprison me. You can't limit my freedom. If I am imprisoned, the production of potions in the ninth district will be greatly reduced. My students will also go on strike. My Amy Potion Union will also stop supplying you. At that time, the influence of the ninth district will decline again and become the worst among all the districts." Dean indifferently said, "We are all a group of cold-blooded monsters. Do you really think that your students will fight against me because of your imprisonment? Even though I don't understand the situation, I'm sure that some of your students have been hoping for your death for a long time. Only when you're dead can they have a chance to make a name for themselves. No one likes to be suppressed by others. I just need to give them a little more sweetness. Do you think they'll just disband and fight to the death against the church?" Amy's eyes were slightly red, and her lips slightly trembled. Dean's words were like a sharp sword that pierced into the depths of her heart. Of course, she knew that most of her students would not do such a thing for her, except for a few. The so-called teacher-student relationship was as fragile as a piece of paper in front of a behemoth like Dean. However, she didn't expect Dean to be so crazy and overbearing. He dared to be so tough as soon as he took office. "You will definitely suffer losses if you imprison me." Amy took a deep breath and gritted her teeth. "You want to restrict my freedom? I would rather die than make potions for you." Dean gently tapped the pen on the table. His words were as steady as his rhythm. "Don't say that you would rather die. Death is not so terrible. Barely surviving is the most painful thing. I advise you to be obedient. Otherwise, your delicate face will soon be gone. What do you think about sewing a mummy's face on your face?" Amy's pupils dilated. Her chest violently heaved up and down. Her face was as white as paper. She trembled. No, don't do that. It seems pretty good to sew an ugly male mummy's face on it." Dean was interested. "I don't know how I would feel when I look in the mirror with an ugly face that exudes the stench of a rotten corpse." Amy's body trembled. She seemed to have completely forgotten the pain in her wrist. I promise you. Too late." Dean shrugged his shoulders. "I've thought about it. You don't have to regret it. I'll replace you when I'm satisfied with your performance." Then he said to Hawkeye next to him, "I'll leave this matter to you. Also prepare 2 big mirrors so that our great potion master can admire himself." Hawkeye's scalp tingled. He had been in office for so many years, but he had never heard of such a brutal torture, especially for a girl who loved beauty. It was more terrible than death. He swallowed his saliva. I know. He didn't dare to persuade Dean again, although they had just met for a short time, but the impression in his mind was that the new elder was a brutal devil. Moreover, he was crazier than all the other devils. No. Amy screamed in horror. She saw that Dean was serious. I beg you. I am willing to do anything. Don't do this to me. I beg you. You have to pay the price for doing something wrong. Dadian indifferently said. Since you think that poisoning me is a trivial matter, then this matter is not worth mentioning. You better give up struggling. You won't be able to escape today. You won't be able to escape from here. You won't be able to escape even if you have wings. By the way, this idea came from a madman I met many years ago. You should thank him. No, Amy screamed. Dean glanced at Hawkeye. Why are you still standing there? Hawkeye smiled bitterly. He didn't say anything, but his figure suddenly moved and appeared in front of Amy like teleportation. Bang! Amy just reacted and looked at him in horror. The next moment, her vision went black, and she fell to the ground. Hawkeye took off the handkerchief and looked at Amy, who was in a coma. He turned to Dean. Elder, I'll call someone to move her away and change the carpet. Dadian looked at him meaningfully. He was worthy of being Carrie's confidant. Carrie had served as his secretary and bodyguard. He should be the strongest in the 9th region. He should be at the top of senior hunters, or even stronger than them. It should be because of his magic marks. No wonder Carrie had put him in an important position. It didn't take long for Hawkeye to find Dean again after Hawkeye took the unconscious Amy out. Elder, the chairman has come to see you. Chairman. Dean narrowed his eyes. Why did the old pope look for him so soon? Bring him in. Yes. A figure covered in a black robe, wearing a black hood and a mask came into the room. His whole body exuded a cold aura, but the heat in his body was as strong as fire, not inferior to Hawkeye next to him, even a bit stronger. A person at the same level as a saint? Dean looked at Hawkeye. You go out first. Yes. Hawkeye respectfully left. Greetings, Elder Devil King. This is the letter from the chairman. The man in black robe's voice was hoarse. It was obvious that he was deliberately controlling his voice. He took out a letter from his pocket. It seemed that he was afraid of leaving traces on the letter. He handed it to Dean. Dean didn't take it, but glanced at it. There was a black sickle logo on the letter. It was the mark of the chairman of the Dark Faction. The black-robed man bowed slightly, turned around, and left without another word. Dean watched him leave. After he left, he took out a handkerchief from his arms, carefully picked up the letter, and opened it. Chapter 470. Dean slightly raised his eyebrows. He didn't expect to find a job for him to do. Dispatch 10 followers to kill Marley at 7:15. One of them must be a 3-star alchemist. Don't alert the enemy, and don't let the target leave the hunting range. Target location, Falkland Street 12. The content was short. There wasn't any extra words except for the task. The task should be to kill Marley. But the number of people and the identity of the followers are specified. Dean narrowed his eyes. I'd like to personally see who this Marley is. He memorized the handwriting on the letter and burned it so that no one would find it and expose his identity. Although the handwriting on the letter might not be the old Pope's, it was most likely written by one of his confidants. Hawkeye, Dean called out as the ashes extinguished. The door was pushed open. Hawkeye respectfully came in. Elder, what's your command? Go and investigate who Marley is. He is the one who lives on Falkland Street. Dadian ordered. Hawkeye complied. It didn't take long for Hawkeye to return to the room. Elder, I found out that Marley is a professor of history at Druid College. He is 58 years old and was born in a declining knight family. His grandfather was a silver knight. His family has 20 acres of land. His father has passed away, and his mother is living in a small town in his hometown. He temporarily lives in Falkland Street 12. He paused as he looked at Dadian. He seems to have another identity. He is a follower of nature's religion. Dean didn't expect Hawkeye to investigate this person so quickly. He was surprised by the intelligence network of the Dark Church. Nature? Are you talking about the nature that doesn't believe in God? Yes. Hawkeye respectfully nodded. The nature doesn't believe in the God of light. They always talk about materialism and blasphemy. Their activities were relatively low-key a few years ago, but they have become more and more frequent in the last 2 years. There have been several conflicts between the 9th region and the nature, but there hasn't been any fierce conflict. Why? Elder Carey said that the Radiant Church wants to deal with them even more than we do. This bone should be left for the Radiant Church to chew. Dean nodded slightly. It seemed that Carey wasn't sent by the monastery, but in the end he believed the old pontiff's other identity and handed over the position to Dean. The monastery was able to eradicate a real elder of the Dark Church without much effort. Moreover, they were able to support their own people. It was the sharpest knife in the monastery. Are there any 3-star alchemists who are free? Dudian asked. Hawkeye thought for a moment. A few. Pick one of them and let him take 9 people with him to kill Marley tonight. We'll leave at 6 o'clock, Dudian ordered. Hawkeye was taken aback. You want to kill him yourself? Let's meet him and learn about nature. Dudian casually said. Hawkeye understood and didn't dare to ask any more questions. After Hawkeye left, Dean sat on the chair and thought for a moment. He suddenly thought of something. He took out the animal glue mask and applied it on his face. He couldn't always wear a mask in the future. In case someone tried to imitate his appearance and convey false orders, it would cause unpredictable consequences. Moreover, the protective effect of the animal glue mask was stronger than the mask. He didn't use it before because he was worried that it might be poisoned. But now he had the Night King's water, so he didn't need to worry about it. Moreover, he had told Hawkeye that he was wearing the animal glue mask. If he didn't get poisoned, then Hawkeye's expression would change. After all, he was the only one who had access to the animal glue mask besides the monastery. The thin animal glue mask was attached to his face. It was like a soft layer of skin that penetrated into the pores. He looked in the mirror and saw that his appearance had changed. The animal glue mask seemed to have disappeared from his face. Only by concentrating on it could he see the slight differences in the pores of his face. He kneaded his face and saw that his appearance in the mirror had changed. It was like he could knead at will. It's amazing. I didn't think that the monastery could make such a thing. Dudian exclaimed in his heart. This thing allowed him to disguise himself as almost anyone. In this era where the detection methods were weak, it was simply a weapon to commit crimes. However, it would be fine if the magistrate didn't alarm the punishers. Once the punishers got involved, it would be impossible for him to hide from them just by changing his face. After all, the face could be changed, but the smell emitted from the pores was difficult to hide, unless he wore other perfumes all the time. My voice doesn't sound like an old man. I should change to a young face. Dudian kneaded his face in front of the mirror. Time passed by in a hurry. It was 6 o'clock in the evening. Trun and his 9 friends were waiting by the carriage outside the manor. From time to time, he would look at the time from his pocket watch. His heart was full of tension and excitement. He didn't think that he would be able to go on a mission with the elder of the Dark Church. He felt like he was in a dream. Moreover, the difficulty of the mission wasn't high, so he could fully express himself. He understood that it was better to rely on the elder than to do well. If he could rely on the elder of the Dark Church, then he might be promoted again in the future. When he told his friends about the news, his friends rushed to give him gifts just to get a place in the team. This made him a little vain, but in order not to affect his performance, he didn't choose friends who were also 3-star alchemists like him. Instead, he chose some friends who he met in the early days and were still wandering at the bottom. 2 figures came out of the manor while he was waiting nervously. Trun's eyes lit up as he recognized one of them. It was the famous Hawkeye, the personal secretary of the elder. Even a 5-star alchemist would be polite to him. Trun's heart beat fiercely as he thought of this. His eyes fell on the young man next to Hawkeye. It was a handsome young man in his early 20s. He had black hair and warm eyes. His figure was slender and had a unique temperament. Elder, Trun stepped forward and saluted in a low voice. Dudian wrinkled his brows. Hawkeye softly reprimanded Trun. You brainless thing. What are you talking about? We are outside. Trun was scared as his face turned pale. He looked at Dudian. I'm sorry. I couldn't help, but Dudian was too lazy to pursue the matter. Is everyone here? Get ready to go. Yes, everyone is here, Trun replied in a trembling voice. Dudian nodded and sat down in a carriage. Hawkeye looked at Dudian. You really don't need me to accompany you? No, you can go back. Dudian closed the door. Trun went back to the carriage and winked at his friends. All of them quickly got into the carriage. Trun whispered to Dudian inside the carriage. "Are we leaving?" "Yes." Trun drove the carriage and left the manor. After the carriage entered the city, it deliberately took a few detours before entering Falkland Street. Trun jumped out of the carriage and came to the side of Dudian's carriage. "We have arrived. Are we going to start now?" His tone was full of respect. His heart was full of apprehension as he had made a mistake in front of Dudian. Dudian opened the door and looked at the tall building in front of him. He could see two figures inside the building. One of them was busy and seemed to be a servant. The other one should be Marley. "Clean up the scene. Don't let the Holy Church find any traces." Dudian said, "Wait for me to come out. Moreover, no one is allowed to come in without my permission." "Yes." Trun respectfully smiled. Dudian didn't look at him as he strode towards Marley's door and gently knocked. Soon, the door opened. An ordinary-looking middle-aged woman wearing servant clothes looked at Dean in confusion. "Who are you?" "I'm looking for Mr. Marley." Dudian smiled. "Come in. Mr. Marley is in the study room on the second floor. I'll call him for you." The middle-aged woman looked at Dudian's handsome face. She opened the door and took out a pair of clean slippers and handed them to Dudian. Dudian put on the slippers and came to the living room. He was surprised to find that the living room was full of bookcases. "Mr. Marley will come down in 5 minutes." The middle-aged woman went downstairs and poured tea for Dudian. Dudian thanked her and quietly waited for the tea. The middle-aged woman used a rag to wipe and clean the room. She looked at Dudian from time to time. Dudian felt that he shouldn't make himself so handsome. It was too eye-catching. 5 minutes passed quickly. The sound of footsteps came from upstairs. An old man with black and white hair and a slightly hunched back came downstairs. He looked at Dudian, who was sitting on the sofa in the living room. He was somewhat puzzled, but seeing Dudian's extraordinary clothes, he came over and pushed the glasses on the bridge of his nose. "You are?" Dudian smiled. "Hello, Mr. Marley. I'm an elder of the 9th region of the Dark Church." The polite smile on Marley's face froze. He was startled. He was startled because of 2 reasons. First, he had never heard of a member of the Dark Church who was hiding in the dark. But now, he had formally introduced himself to others as if he wasn't from the Dark Church but the Knight's Hall. Second, he didn't expect that a member of the Dark Church would be sitting in front of him. Moreover, it was an elder-level big shot. "Dark Church." At this time, an astonished voice sounded from his side. It was the middle-aged woman who cleaned the place. Her face was filled with astonishment as she stared at the handsome young man on the sofa with disbelief in her eyes. But soon, a great fear surged out, and she reacted. Just as she was about to open her mouth to scream, she suddenly felt a pain in her neck. Her vision suddenly turned black, and she fell down. Blood spurted out from her neck and quickly spread on the ground. Dudian raised his arm. It seemed that he was holding something, but it was gone. The white plate under the teacup that the middle-aged woman handed to him was gone. The plate was dyed red. Dean smiled as he looked at Marley. There seemed to be a force in the depths of Dean's gentle eyes that pressed down on Marley's mouth. Marley's mouth was slightly open, but he couldn't make a sound. You. Marley's body slightly shook. His face was pale as he turned to look at the middle-aged woman who was lying on the ground. He looked at Dudian in anger as he clenched his fists. It seemed that he was restraining himself, but he was afraid. "What are you going to do?" Chapter 471. Nothing. Dean smiled. "I'm just here to chat with you. Don't be nervous." Marley's face turned ugly as he suppressed his anger. "You are looking for me. She is innocent. She is just an ordinary civilian. Don't you think it is shameful to kill innocent people? All those who die are innocent, so there is no such thing as innocence." Dean indifferently smiled. "I came to talk to you about nature's teachings." Marley's pupil shrank as he heard the words nature religion. He took a deep breath and sat down on the sofa. The anger in his eyes had subsided. "I knew that you people would come to my door sooner or later. That's why you only hired a servant." "Yes." "Does you include the Holy Church?" Marley looked at Dean. "Is there any difference?" There's no difference. Dean looked at the old man who had the temperament of an old scholar. He smiled. Since you know that there will be such a day, why do you live alone? Isn't it more dangerous? Marley asked. So you think that I should live in a turtle shell? Dean said. Each of us seems to be living in a turtle shell. There was a trace of mockery in Marley's eyes. That's why our thoughts can't be imprisoned. You believe in the false gods, and they are the root of everything. Everything in the world is composed of matter. It's the matter that makes life. It's not the so-called God of light or the great holy God. It's a pity that you don't care about the truth in front of you. You like to believe in baseless lies, ridiculous and pathetic. Dean glanced at the bookshelves. If I'm not wrong, then these are the books you wrote. You pushed you out because you knew that you would be exposed. That's why you didn't send anyone to protect you. Marley snorted coldly and said, I wasn't pushed out. I came out of my own will. Questioning the existence of laughable people like you will naturally result in your revenge. Everything is within my expectations. You know that you're going to die, but you still jumped out. Don't you have any attachment to life? I'm attached to a world where people's minds are liberated. Dean said, Unfortunately, you can't do anything. Your book has been seized by the Holy Church and listed as a banned book. No one will listen to your words. No one will know what you have done. Your existence is meaningless. While perhaps the only meaning is to die in my hands. Marley's eyebrows twitched slightly as he snorted coldly. Nothing in this world can stop people from pursuing the truth. Even if my book becomes a banned book, as long as one person reads the book that I've sold to the outside world, what I've done will be meaningful. It's a pity that people will never know if they are pursuing the truth or not. Dean got up and went to the bookshelf. He glanced at all the books. All of them were signed Marley. The Honest Man, Philosophical Correspondence. Dean took out a random book. Are all of you trying to destroy religion with your mouth? Dean indifferently said, I just want to know about your religion. I want to see if you have the capital to compete with the Holy Church. Dean indifferently said, I just want to know about the nature religion. I want to see if you have the capital to contend with the Holy Church. Dean indifferently said, I just want to know about your religion. I want to see if you have the capital to compete with the Holy Church. Marley sneered. Do you want to use the religion to attack the Holy Church? Why not? Dean smiled. Isn't it the same thing as attacking the Holy Church? As for the Dark Church, you are just cursing us. After all, no one cares about what we believe in, including ourselves. Marley was startled. Dean sat back on the sofa and raised the Philosophical Correspondence. This book is good. Can I take it back? Marley sneered. You have to believe in materialism if you want to understand this book. Of course I believe in materialism. Dean shrugged. Marley was startled again. He took a moment to react. You are indeed a member of the Dark Church. You will do anything to achieve your goals. You will even betray the God you believe in. No matter what you do, I won't tell you the headquarters of the religion. Don't even think about it. Dean faintly smiled. It has nothing to do with it. I really believe in it. Marley frowned as he looked at Dean's eyes. There is no God in this world. If there was, then we wouldn't be living in the giant wall. Dean smiled. Only those who have stepped out of the giant wall will know that the so-called God is bullshit. Marley narrowed his eyes. How can you become an elder of the Dark Church if you don't believe in the great devil? Dean smiled. I'm an elder. What does it have to do with me believing in the great devil? Do people who believe in the God of light can become the Pope? Do people who believe in the God of light can get justice? Do people who believe in love can get love? There is no such thing in this world. Marley was startled. There was a trace of trance in his eyes as he remained silent. Dean looked at the time. It was almost 7:15. He looked at Marley. If you believe me, then you can tell me how to join the Nature Order. Instead of being enemies with both the Holy Church and the Dark Church, it's better to deal with one of them. There's a saying that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. I hope we can be friends. Marley slowly turned his head and looked at the vase next to the bookcase. There were a few roses inside. There was a trace of sadness in his eyes. You are right. Dean slightly raised his eyebrows as he didn't know which sentence Marley was referring to. Marley said, The method to join the religion is in the book in your hand. You will naturally know how to join when you read the book. Dean was startled as he looked at the book in his hand. All the books here are hiding such secrets. Yes. Dean couldn't help but shake his head. Thank you. I'll make the move quickly. Marley was silent as he looked at the roses in the vase. Dean glanced at him, turned around, and stepped over the body of the middle-aged woman on the ground. He left the room and bowed slightly at the door. He put on his shoes and closed the door. He held a book in his hand, like a student visiting his teacher. His etiquette was thoughtful as he walked down the stairs. Trun, who was hiding in the dark outside the door, jumped out as he saw Dean. Elder. Dean's expression returned to indifference. Don't let him suffer too much. Yes. Trun nodded and waved his hand. He rushed in with 2 people. The rest hid in the surroundings as sentries. Bang! Dean heard him rudely kick open the door that he had just gently closed. When he opened his eyes again, he saw a large amount of scorching air hidden in the neighboring building. With a swoosh, his figure swayed slightly and disappeared from the street as if he had turned into smoke. At the same time Dean disappeared, the sound of armors rubbing echoed in the street. The uniform pace came from all directions and completely surrounded Marley's house. Everything was covered by the cold night. On a small path by the Tyza River, a tall and slender young man strolled leisurely. Looking at the reflection of the moon on the surface of the lake, there was a trace of nostalgia in his eyes, but he quickly shook his head and smiled. I'll only be gone for a few days. At the end of the straight Tyza River, an ancient castle stood alone in the darkness of the night, with faint candlelight shining through. Chapter 472. Bastard. In the empty hall of the castle, the teenager punched the table. What bullshit Knight's Hall. Not only did they not help Dean, but they even took away Dean's Medal of Honor. Damn it. Nicholas, who was dressed like a butler, sat on the sofa and sipped his tea. He said indifferently, the more exquisite something is, the more times it needs to be trimmed. Only by cutting off the ugly and uncomfortable parts will it look perfect. What is there to be angry about? Mason looked at him in anger. Don't talk nonsense. Dean has been taken away for 3 days, and there's no news from him. Aren't you worried? On the other side, Sergei was leaning against the wall. What's the use of being anxious? Glenn and Gwyneth have already sneaked into the inner wall. We can only wait for their news. What's the point of being angry? Mason's face was ugly as he clenched his teeth. His eyes were full of grievances and unwillingness. Nicholas took out a pair of nail scissors and trimmed his hard nails. Haven't you seen it yet? There is no news about him in the newspapers these 2 days. Old Feline said that the military has issued an order to prohibit the newspapers from publishing any reports about Dean. They are planning to let him slowly fade out of people's sight. After a long time, he will eventually be forgotten, and this matter will be covered under people's memories. Even the Holy Church hasn't come forward, so we are just struggling in vain. Zach, who was sitting on the sofa calmly, said, We can't give up even if it's in vain. Who will help him if we give up? I don't care. I'll go to the magistrate tomorrow and ask them to help us get justice. Mason said in a hateful tone. Nicholas glanced at him but didn't bother to pay attention to him. Sergei was about to open his mouth when he frowned. Who? Everyone was surprised as they looked around. Oh! A soft laughter echoed from the stairs of the second floor. Everyone was stunned as they looked at the source of the laughter. They saw a teenager sitting on the stairs. He was smiling as he looked at everyone in the hall. It was Dean. At this moment, Dean had already kneaded the animal glue mask on his face into his own appearance. He smiled and came down the stairs. It seems that a lot of things have happened in the past 2 days. Like a cat that had its tail stepped on, Nicotine was stunned for a moment before jumping up from the sofa. He was so nervous that he stuttered. Young master, why did you suddenly come back? Dean walked over and patted his shoulder. Don't be so nervous if you haven't done anything wrong. Nicholas stiffened and smiled bitterly. Yes, young master. Macon was startled for a moment. His eyes widened as he excitedly said, Dean, you are back. Dean. Zach was also surprised. Dean sat on the sofa and smiled. I've let you worry about me. Once Glenn and Gwyneth come back, tell them that they don't need to sneak into the inner wall anymore. It's to avoid any accidents. Sergei was surprised. You smuggled back? Do the people in the inner wall know? Nothing for the time being. Dean said, you don't have to run around for me anymore. Wait for them to come back and do what I told you before. If you don't have enough money, then go to Old Feline to borrow it. Sergei was startled. He suddenly thought of something and his face changed. When you came back, the people outside, don't worry, I avoided them. Dean smiled but narrowed his eyes. There are 8 people lurking outside and they're distributed in 8 directions. All the paths are blocked. They should be from the same force. Have you contacted them? Do you know who they are? Sergei shook his head. We don't dare to beat the grass and scare the snake. But Glenn had secretly approached them and said that they were from the Dark Church. Dark Church? Dean's eyes lit up as he smiled. These people are cute. They didn't stare at you, but were stared at by Glenn. Hearing this, everyone looked at each other and smiled. Nicholas laughed and said respectfully, Young master, when Glenn and the others went out, they all sneaked out through the ground. These people simply don't know. Dean nodded. Glenn was a top assassin. There were only a few people in the outer wall who could track her. These people should be from the same group that poisoned me. Some information flashed through Dean's mind. He had an outline in his heart. He asked, what is the recent situation of the Mel family? We didn't pay attention to it. Nicholas bowed his head. Dean knew the reason, but didn't blame him. I'll solve it. You don't need to worry about anything. You just need to do what I told you. Especially Nicholas. Sergei, your task is very important. Sergei, in addition to recruiting mercenaries, you also need to establish a stronghold outside the giant wall. That will be our last retreat. In addition, I will personally pick up the materials from the monster's body. You will receive them in the stronghold outside the giant wall in 2 days. Sergei knew what Dean was referring to. He nodded, I will. I'll get the materials, and you can use the rest. Dean glanced at them. Where's Noyce? Why isn't he here? Nicholas replied. Master, Noyce went to Old Patriarch to inquire about your news. He should be back soon. Dudian nodded. At this time, footsteps were heard from the stairs. It was Yvette who was holding Gabriel and Artemis. The 3 of them were stunned as they saw Dean sitting on the sofa. Yvette had rushed over when she heard the sound, but they didn't expect it to be Dean. Gabriel and Artemis knew what happened. They were pleasantly surprised to see Dean return safely and immediately ran over. Dean had noticed them practicing swordsmanship with Yvette when he sneaked into the castle. He smiled and touched Artemis's head. Did you listen to your brother's words? Yes. Artemis replied in a well-behaved manner. Gabriel smiled and said respectfully, Greetings, young master. You are finally back. You will always come back. Dean patted his shoulder and turned to Mason and Zach. You will practice with Gabriel in the future. Old Feline will send you a batch of God's blessings so that you can become strong as soon as possible and have the power to protect yourselves. All right. Mason smirked. Once Glenn and the others come back. Nicholas, let Glenn cooperate with you. Sergei, you and Gwyneth will be responsible for hunting outside the giant wall. Dudian looked at Nicholas and Sergei. Teach Macon and the others when you have free time. Yes. Nicholas and Sergei accepted the order. Dean smiled. You go up first. I have something to talk to Yvette. Everyone looked at each other and led Gabriel and Artemis upstairs. Yvette saw Dean waving her. What? Dean used her language. Do you want to go back? Yvette was stunned. Are you willing to let me go? There was a trace of trembling in her voice. She was brought here by Dean. She didn't expect to escape from the hands of the devil. She didn't expect him to be merciful and let her go. Dean smiled. It's useless to keep you here. Your only role is to be a hostage. I will let you go, but there is a condition. Yvette suddenly woke up from her dream. She knew that he wouldn't be so kind. She coldly said, What's your condition? Speak. Dean smiled. My condition is very simple. I want you to be the king. Yvette was stunned for a long time. She suddenly understood and snorted. Stop dreaming. First of all, in our system, a woman can't be a chieftain. She can only be a witch. I have royal blood, so it's impossible for me to be a witch. Moreover, I won't help you even if I become the king of the chiefs." Dean calmly said, "What do you think I need your help with?" Yvette was stunned. "The purpose of you barbarians is nothing more than to enter the Golden Wall. There is no plague and no disaster. You want to kill the people who have expelled you from the Golden Wall." Dean indifferently said, "My goal is the same, but your goal is the outer wall. My goal is the inner wall. I don't want you to help me, but you should beg me to help you." Yvette's eyes widened. Are you going to rebel against the inner wall?" "I will betray myself if I don't rebel against others," Dean replied. "You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.